Welcome, everybody, to the July 7th, 2022, 9 a.m. regular planning board meeting for the town of Sunset Beach. Seeing we have a quorum, we'll call to order. And if you could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As we do before every planning board meeting, I want to read a statement that is addressed to each member up here on the planning board. Does any member of the planning board have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with regard to any item on the agenda? And if so, please state so at this time.
No.
Ron? No for me?
I do not.
No.
Thank you. We have an agenda before us that's been prepared by town staff. Does anyone wish to amend the existing agenda as is?
Chair, would you maybe consider, should we consider moving, I don't know how the mechanics of doing this, new business 6.1 up ahead of old business? Because it seems like the other two are kind of together to a certain extent, or same people. And if these folks are here, I don't know if we have representatives of this. The way through that would be, I don't know, the mechanics of doing a new business before old business.
Can we mix old and new business?
Yes, you did it last time. You can take new business 1, move it up, and that way old business 1 and new business 2, because they have the same applicant.
Okay. Entertain a motion for that.
Well, I'll make a motion then to move new business 6.1 and ahead of old business 5.1.
We have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so done. All right, now we're open. This is great to have participation. We're now open for public comments on agenda items only by anyone that wishes to come to the podium. We have a 3-minute ruling, and you're not allowed to address the planning board specifically, but we're certainly very interested in any comments you might have about today's agenda items. Does anybody wish to speak? Please, sir. If you could provide your name and address once you get to the podium, please. And again, we try to limit it to 3 minutes. I'll give you a warning on that.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, name and address, please.
My name is Greg Barrett. My wife and I, we live at 204 Jonesburg Court in Sea Trail. This is a first for me. I've never been to one of these sessions, and thank you for having it and giving us the opportunity to speak. As I said, my name is Greg Barrett. My wife and I, we live full-time in Sea Trail. We built our home in 2011, 2012, just as Sea Trail had entered bankruptcy. An ominous beginning for sure, but looking back, to us, those were the good old days. What followed has been years of neglect as we've witnessed the restaurants closing, the convention center closed, and sadly, the deterioration of the golf courses. In our early years here, we were excited to have friends come and visit us to show off this place we call paradise. Unfortunately, for many years now, we've been embarrassed. Imagine a golf community with no restaurants, closed facilities, and subpar golf courses. The breath of fresh air that Riptide has brought to the community in the last couple of years is very noticeable. They are building attractive homes that most buyers appear to be very happy with. And importantly, they have worked with the Sea Trail Master Association to assist on a number of community upgrade projects. The renovated chapel gardens, the new entry walls at all 5 entrances, the renovated Maples Activity Center with an elevator that is going to be installed this month, and already more than 24 stormwater fixes. I mention these things because I believe they demonstrate to our community that they, Riptide, have a positive vision for the future of Sea Trail, and they are invested in it for the long term. My wife and I support the text amendments. We want restaurants within our community. We want amenities like coffee shops, ice cream shops, and boutiques within Sea Trail. And we think it would be great to walk to these shops or drive your golf cart to meet with your neighbors in an attractive setting. In short, we want to live in a vibrant, forward-thinking community. And let's not forget, we want the tax revenue that will be collected at these new places within Sunset Beach and not by retailers in surrounding communities as occurs today. Finally, I hope it is not lost on everyone that the text amendments will also guarantee that all 3 golf courses will remain and be given the opportunity to thrive. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We hope that you will approve these text amendments and ensure that Sea Trail has a bright future. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a public comment?
Good morning, Board. My name is John Shirk. I actually live at 725 Bermuda Walk within Sea Trail Plantation. I've been a member of this community partly through my parents who moved down here in 2002. So we've been here 20 years. I became a full-time resident in 2014 and have lived in Sea Trail the entire time that I've been a full-time resident. I've seen the community grow from the time when we were driving across the swing bridge to get to the beach. You know, I've seen various different things happen. I've also seen Sea Trail go into a decline, and I've seen the town struggle with various different, economic things that are going on. Obviously, Sunset Beach as a whole has experienced a lot of influx of tourism and people with the development and the building and whatnot. The word is out that Sunset Beach is a beautiful place to live, so people are going to be coming here. I do support the text amendment as it's written. The reason that I support the text amendment as it is written is we do have the people that are coming into this community. They're here. They are coming in, they're enjoying our beaches and our golf courses, and they're enjoying the type of life that we have here. However, what they have to do once they get off the beach where they haven't spent any money, they've used our resources, they've used our fire, they've used our police, our parks and recs, all of those things that we're spending money on. And then they have to drive someplace else in order to spend their money, and the tax dollars go away. So they're increasing our expense, but we're not getting anything out of it. By adopting the text amendments, we have an avenue to continue to provide these services and then release a little bit of pressure on the pocket strings that the town is actually enduring right now. With this text amendment as well, it does protect my golf course. And I call it my golf course because I live there, and that's the reason that I moved in here. But it protects my golf course because with this text amendment, number one, you have to have a 1 acre plot for this limited commercial. It is attractive commercial. It is a way for the residents to enjoy all of these various different things staying in Sunset Beach. But you have to maintain the golf course. So if you don't maintain the golf course, then that land becomes undevelopable. And if you've already developed that land, then unfortunately, if the golf course goes away, then those uses are now non-conforming uses, and that creates other problems. So that's an incentive for things to continue to move forward, to continue to beautify the community, in short, that is the vision I believe that Sunset Beach has initially, that we want to have a beautiful community. And I believe that the text amendment as it's written is just another avenue to continue moving forward with making this town and my community a beautiful place to live. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to make a public comment? Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. My name's Roz Dolan. I live at 627 Eastwood Park Road. We've been a property owner here in Sea Trail Golf Resort for almost 20 years. My husband Cliff and I purchased a Champions condo back in 2003 and then moved here full time in January of 2013 and purchased a single family home here in Sea Trail. We love Sunset Beach and Sea Trail Golf Resort. We have been waiting for over 15 years for Sea Trail Golf Resort to reach its full potential. Instead, we have watched the closing of the Sea Trail Convention Center, the end of the rental program in which we've participated for 10 years, the closing of restaurants and amenities within Sea Trail. It has been very frustrating to watch Sea Trail decline over the last 15 years. I have a map of Sea Trail from 2003 that showed all of the future development that was supposed to be planned for Sea Trail in order to support those 3 golf courses. And so we keep this to remember, what the plan was from 1990s on to now. Sea Trail was a master planned community since it was first developed and was planned to have single family homes, condos, restaurants, convention center, etc. It's always been planned to have a large number of homes and condos which are needed to support the 3 golf courses and all of the commercial amenities that were first put into Sea Trail. I'm in favor of supporting and approving the text amendments that will allow additional commercial development and commercial updates in Sea Trail. When people retire, they want restaurants, public gathering spaces, grocery stores, shops, all within walking distance or within an area that they can drive their golf cart. We just purchased a golf cart, like so many others have, so that we can drive to these facilities and especially try to stay within Sea Trail or within Sunset Beach. Sea Trail could be a top destination again for golf, conventions, weddings, family reunions, all of those places where people can come and stay for the week or the weekend and stay within the property. It's mine and other people's dream to have Sea Trail be the great community that it was planned to be with all of these updated amenities. We finally have a developer, Riptide Builders, who lives in Sunset Beach and wants to bring these amenities and commercial businesses back to Sea Trail. Riptide Builders has done a great job of building high-quality, beautiful homes in Sea Trail and has begun a renovation of landscaping and enhancements to the common areas. We want Riptide Builders to continue to do these enhancements in Sea Trail. I'm supportive of their vision for Sea Trail. I want to see this happen now while I'm young enough still to enjoy it. I hope that we, the town of Sunset Beach, Riptide Builders, and the Sea Trail community can work together to help Sea Trail Golf Resort realize its full potential. It will be a win-win for all of us involved. Approving these text amendments is the beginning for this vision. Thank you so much for listening to our comments.
Thank you. Please. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Julie Chortnoff, and my husband and I reside at 9109 Ocean Harbor Golf Club Road. And yes,
My
we're
neighbor.
neighbors. Yeah, yeah. My husband and I moved down to the area and originally in 2015 down in Ocean Isle, and we've owned property in Sunset for 2 years, and a year ago moved into our home new build that was completed. Part of our draw in moving down here and then choosing Sunset Beach was the beach and the golf course. My husband is a golfer. He had come down for years and golfed in the Myrtle Beach area. What we would love to see is something that would bring his friends and the type of people where he used to go on these huge golf trips to, that would allow them to come into Sea Trail and stay and play so that we can share this place that we love and, the reason for why we came down here with everybody who's coming down to visit. Because, you'll build it and they come. We have guests down here all the time. And we would love for those guests to be able to shop local, play local, and for that money to stay in Sunset Beach. Because as others have pointed out, what is happening right now is they come to the beach, they come to the golf courses, but then they leave those places and spend that money in other areas. And if we could, with this amendment, support that type of development, that's a win-win for us all. Before I moved here, lived in another kind of resort area in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And although it's, again, a different town with different challenges, their main challenge was they had obviously the amusement park and the arena, but poor downtown Hershey didn't have much of a draw. So people would come to those things and then they would go other places and spend that money. Within the last 5 or 6 years, they've revitalized the downtown area. Buildings that were vacant have shops and stores. And, they're themed to what makes Hershey unique. There's no reason why we couldn't do that with development in Sea Trail, those commercial businesses that would play to the characteristics that make Sunset Beach what it is. And then those people come and stay, and that benefits us all. So I think that thoughtful planning that would provide that opportunity is something that is much needed to help us all grow and thrive, because people are coming, they're already here. And to provide those services would be a great benefit.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and congratulations on you getting your road fixed.
Yeah.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you all? My name is Claire Yoder. My family and I live at 300 Shoreline Drive West, Sunset Beach, North Carolina. and we have been in our home about 8 years. I am a local realtor. I'm licensed in both North and South Carolina. So on a daily basis, I deal with both residents as well as future potential residents wanting to learn not only about our community, but also about the surrounding communities. I am in full support of the text amendment for Sea Trail. I think Sea Trail offers many wonderful amenities, and with the transition of ownership of Riptide over the last few years, as everyone's mentioned before me, you have seen a great revitalization within the community. I think their thoughtful planning and thoughtful approach to future potential prospects and growth is a key factor, not only again for residents who are looking to transition from a local standpoint, but also from a state as well as a countrywide standpoint. When I am able to showcase the thoughtful development, not only the golf courses, but the other amenities mentioned before, such as the outdoor pools, the wonderful golf courses, the tennis courts, that's a very attractive thing to, encourage those residents to come and live in Sunset Beach. While Ocean Isle and Charlotte and Calabash, they're great anchors. At the end of the day, we would love to have, residents who love Sunset Beach and want to grow and thrive within the community. From a business standpoint, I know that there are great statistical information that the county does from a tourism. I reached out to the chamber as well as the tourism and development community just to inquire about what some of those statistics were. In 2020, obviously, the height of COVID, they said that one of the driving factors that was able to support our community was that tourism. Again, 2020, over $38 million was brought to Brunswick County through tourism-related businesses and a tax revenue standpoint. So again, sometimes it can be a little scary with the unknown and what future development can bring. But I think the tax amendment will allow thoughtful development to happen that can bring those tourists to support our already growing businesses and alleviate some of those tax needs. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Steve Miller. I live at 140 Forest Walk in Sunset Beach, actually in Sea Trail. My wife and I have lived here for 4 years now. Since moving here, we have witnessed the growth and expansion of our town and the growth of the Sea Trail Golf Resort in homes. We've seen a steady rise in our house values and subsequently a rise in the tax base and the revenue to the town of Sunset Beach. But even while we've seen these exciting things happen, we've also experienced our 3 Sea Trail golf courses receive minimum investment from the current owner. While course conditions remain playable, the 3 courses are certainly not what they could or should be. We've seen restaurants close, services reduced, and reported problems go unresolved. We've seen visitors not be able to buy a hamburger and a drink after a round of golf due to the limited hours of operation from the management of Sea Trail. We've seen buildings stand empty and unused. The Maples Clubhouse and the Convention Center are prime examples. We've watched as a Chinese billionaire sucks the dollars out of our community and our town and sends it overseas. It's time to change this. We have an opportunity with these small proposed text modifications to spark a rebirth of Sea Trail. The proposed changes offer our community the opportunity for investments in new shops, boutiques, restaurants, a new driving range, and other small and limited business opportunities. All good and exciting things for the community of Sea Trail. I've reviewed these proposed changes with quite a number of my friends and neighbors within the Sea Trail community. With one exception, we all view these changes as positive, exciting, and good for Sea Trail, and they hope it happens. I believe that the planning board with these proposed minor text modifications has the opportunity to set the framework in place that will allow for the execution of a well thought out plan that will result in a more prosperous and improved Sea Trail Golf Resort to be enjoyed by our full-time and part-time residents, as well as our out-of-town guests and visitors. As a homeowner, as a taxpayer, and as one of the leaders in the community, I ask that you approve the proposed text modifications to the UDO and recommend the approval of those changes to our town council as soon as possible. Thank you for your time and continued efforts.
Thanks, Steve. Welcome.
My name is Dana Conley. I live at 358 Sea Trail Drive East in Sunset Beach in Sea Trail. I'm also been an employee of Sea Trail and lived at Sea Trail for 32 years. So I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of things, a lot of changes, both positive and negative. But I just wanted to relate to everybody or to you that being here for 32 years, I had the opportunity to work with the original owners of Sea Trail. It was 4 families that had a vision for Sea Trail. I think, as Ms. Dolan pointed out, she has a map that has a lot of future development. They had a vision of a recreational resort type, multi-use type facility at Sea Trail. Have residential, short-term and long-term accommodations, and have a vibrant mixed-use type community. And I think at one point in time, Sunset Beach had Sea Trail community designated as a special district because of these allowable intended uses. I guess in the heyday, Sea Trail had over 600 units for rent on the rental program. That was anywhere from a mini suite up to a 4-bedroom villa. That number diminished over time. And ultimately, I think now there may be 90 or so units that might be on the rental program. So unfortunately, primarily due to the unavailability of quality units, the convention center did close in 2018. While we had the space to use, we didn't have the place to house people to stay. So the ability to have the addition of short-term rental units is key to the success of the convention center. Now, I continue weekly, I get calls from people asking, we want to have a meeting, we want to have our group come down and stay, we want to have, and we just have to turn them away. It breaks my heart to do that, but there are entities out there, there are people that want to use the convention center. There's not that type of an opportunity or a place here in this area to do so, and we want to be able to provide that to them. Chinaway is very eager and willing to collaborate with Riptide. We feel they've done a tremendous job so far in their development and bringing back some like a vibrant atmosphere to our community. And so in 2018, I think Sea Trail had about 1,600 individual property owners. So there were restaurants open, the convention center was open at that point. It was a part of the community that I bought into and they bought into as well. So I know the town supported our efforts during that time. I was able to get occupancy taxes and city taxes to provide to the town to help the town as well. The success of our golf courses are key to revitalizing our community. As people noted, there's, the golf courses are being maintained, but it takes money, it takes more people, it takes the visitors to come here to do so. So again, I've worked here for 32 years. Some people say, why did you stay? But I believe in the original vision of Sea Trail. I believe it can become the vibrant community that it once was and continue to become a better place for our visitors, owners, and the town alike. So definitely in favor of the text amendments, as I believe it does benefit everybody here. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for all that you do for our town.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, please. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to address the board. This is the first time for me. I'm a relatively new homeowner. My name is Dawn Simorowski. I live at 115 Clubhouse Road in Sea Trail. I'd like to go forward and echo many of the things that the other folks have said today. After living in Charlotte after 22 years, my husband and I chose to move to Sunset Beach, particularly in Sea Trail. It was very appealing to us because of the sense of community that Sea Trail offered and also that small town coastal living feel. In the short amount of time that we have lived here, we've noticed the significant decline in the physical appearance and the rapid deterioration of the existing Sea Trail commercial buildings. I'd like to also state, however, that Riptide has done an amazing job in making so many of the improvements with regard to landscaping and the other parts of the infrastructure that they've done thus far. The commercial buildings have become an eyesore to the community and will eventually, if not already, start having a negative impact on this area. As many have said, we have friends, family, co-workers that come to visit, and it's sad to drive by these empty buildings that are just sitting vacant and really just becoming even more of an eyesore on a daily basis. As most of you know, being stagnant in one's life or thinking unhealthy promotes deterioration. It breeds a host of other issues. Change, on the other hand, is good. Growth is good. Smart growth is even better. It's essential to any community, but in a small town, it's key to its success. With smart growth, town officials control the growth, environment, infrastructure, housing. With the already existing buildings in Sea Trail that sit vacant, it only makes sense to try to figure out a way to repurpose them. With the text amendments, which we support, my husband and I, and several of our current neighbors, this could help us move forward. The biggest bang for bringing life back to the commercial use of these businesses is the tax revenue that the town of Sunset Beach will get. Increased commercial increases tax revenue, which provides better services and amenities to the community and to its residents. This area is rapidly changing. Its demographics have changed and continue to change. Its new residents and community members want to support growth done right. It's a win-win for all, the town residents and its ETJs. At the end of the day, we haven't said anything that you all haven't heard before or don't already know. We just ask that you listen to the community and what we truly want to support, and that is the text amendment, so that we can see change in a positive way affect Sea Trail and the rest of our community. Thank you again for listening to me, and I do hope that you support those text amendments.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hello, I'm Susan Freeman. I'm the director of the Brunswick County Chamber of Commerce. I've been here for 4 years, and so one of my first times here in front of you all. My address is 1908 Goose Creek Road in OIB. So I'm more of a county representative here, just speaking on behalf of the convention center. As you're very aware, this part of the county doesn't have a large area for anyone to gather. We meet in smaller areas. We have been held back from holding some of our larger events. And we know that there's a lot of leakage of money that are going to other areas of our county and state as well. So opening up convention center, reopening it as one of the key focus gathering spots that I have been always told about, that it was the place to go. Well, now there isn't a place to go. So we're hoping that you will consider reopening the convention center, supporting Riptide in their efforts of revitalization for our region of the county. And we are here to support you in keeping our dollars here, bringing jobs, bringing opportunities, that, again, the leakage of millions of dollars are going elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a public comment? Sir?
Good morning. Good morning. You all know me. I'm Bob Forrester. I live at 110, 110 Crooked Gully Circle in Sunset Beach. I want to address number 5 in old business, which is the table UDO amendment on chapter 6 for permitted uses, and number 6 in the new business consideration of the chapter 9 amendment of chapter 9. There's been a lot of comments this morning about businesses and Sea Trail, which are all well taken, and I don't disagree with most of them. I request that the board refer to my letter of July 3, which I also request be made a portion of this record. What's requested in the text amendments constitutes basically a substantial rewrite of the land use plan in the UDO. It's not merely a text amendment. The staff report and the application make clear that the intent of this request is to establish a new classification of planned use development containing commercial uses applicable exclusively to property owned by the applicant in the MR3 zone district, which overwhelmingly contains residential uses, to the exclusion of any other property in the larger MR3 zone district or any other zoning district in Sunset Beach. I make that comment not because it's unusual, because that's where his interest, the applicant's interest would lie. But this would be contrary to the entire planning scheme that's expressed throughout the 2017 land use plan, which emphasizes limitation of the location of commercial growth and a recognition that a sufficient amount of land is already zoned for commercial development. The explanation in the application that was filed with this for proposed changes mischaracterizes development and zoning as well as sea trail plantation and the golf resort history. The absence of commercial uses within the MR3 zone district in planning of sea trail plantation and golf resort by Sea Trail Corporation is not merely by error or inadvertence. Commercial uses related to Sea Trail Resort were intentionally established outside the residential zones. In addition to the land zoned for residential and golf courses, Sea Trail Plantation and Golf Resort consists of zoned districts other than the MR3 district, which are zoned and are developed for commercial uses. Pursuant to the 1990 amended Consolidated Master Declaration and the 2006 second amended Consolidated Declaration for Sea Trail Plantation, the plantation includes the mixed-use district on the north side of Sunset Boulevard running between Angels Trace Road and Seaside Road, and the properties on the south side of Sunset Boulevard running from Seaside Road to Shoreline Drive and the MB1 and the MB2 zone districts, all of which are zoned and some of which are developed for commercial purposes, commercial uses. In addition, on December 17, 2001, Sea Trail Corporation recorded a survey, which is entitled Sea Trail Plantation and Golf Resort, with commercial development for property, which became the Mud District and included the MB1 and the MB2 on Sunset Boulevard.
30 seconds, please, Bob.
Clearly identified those as properties within the Sea Trail Resort. The Champions Condominium, which was developed in 2000, contained 14 projected buildings, provided for no commercial uses. I respectfully submit that the proposed changes to as proposed to introduce commercial uses in any part of the established and developed MR3 zone district is contrary to the intent and the specific language of those the land use plan and the UDO, would constitute substantial rewrites and can't be done by a text amendment.
Please wrap it up. Please, Bob.
And I also submit that it's not appropriate for establishment in existing single neighborhoods of existing single family residences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. Sir, good morning.
Morning. My name is Mickey Smith, and I live at 123 Forest Walk, Sunset Beach. Bought a house first on 682 Fairway Drive in Sea Trail first, and then my wife and I decided we would buy another house and moved in 2016. I love Sea Trail. I'm on that beach a lot. Two things I do is play golf and on that beach. I played golf 48 times this year. I had a phone call from a guy that we bought yarn from, owned a yarn company. 44 people he brought down to play golf. He played Sea Trail. He called me up and said, we'll never do it again. And I said, why? He said, there's nowhere to eat. There's nowhere to do anything anymore. The convention center, as mentioned before, used to have, my wife even went to conferences there at one time. And there is no places here, and we need that. So I just want you to know that I am on that beach as a cheerleader for Sea Trail. It'll bring 4 couples in here to the Sea Trails, and I want to see Sea Trails grow. And it needs restaurants, convention centers, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments? Public comments? All right, seeing none, we will close the public comments portion of the planning board meeting. Next item on the agenda is consideration of approval of minutes. We have a series of 4 minutes for special and regular meetings of the planning board. I guess we'll go through each one individually. We have the April 11th. We have the April 11th, 2022 special meeting. And for the benefit of those on YouTube and here in the audience, we have 2 meetings a month. The first one, which is today's meeting, is a regular planning board meeting where we do town business, regular town business. The meeting in the middle of the month is a newly generated meeting that we have because we're rewriting or reevaluating our entire Unified Development Ordinance for the town. And so we meet in open session and we slowly plod through starting at page 1. We're about 2/3 of the way through it now. And we review the UDO as it's written and suggest with the Council of Governments sitting with us to tell us what we legally can and can't do, revise the UDO to be, number one, more business friendly, more advanced thinking. But anyway, the April 11th was a special meeting, and we have our minutes that we've all been given copies of. Does anybody have any suggestions for or requests to amend the minutes for April 11th?
I move that we accept them.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next one is we're going to do each one separately. Chad, I believe that's appropriate. The second meeting is another special meeting for May 19th, 2022. Does anybody have any suggestions for alteration of those minutes?
Nope.
If not, can we entertain a motion to
I
approve?
move that we approve.
Okay, can we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That would be the May 19th minutes. The third one is a regular planning board meeting, June 2nd of 2022. Does anybody have any, make a request for alteration? If not, then we have a motion to accept the June 2nd meeting minutes as submitted in the draft.
A second.
Okay.
I
We
mean,
have a
I'll
motion.
make a move to
Okay,
to
and a
accept.
second?
Excuse me.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that deals with the June 2nd meeting minutes. And the last one is our June 16th, 2022 special meeting. Does anybody have any suggested changes to those meeting minutes as drafted? Can I entertain a motion? I'd like to entertain a motion to accept them as submitted in the draft.
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Katie, all 4 have been accepted as you submitted. Thank you. Good job on those. All right, moving forward, we had changed the order of this meeting, the agenda, to move new business 1, Seaside Village final plat approval, up to the next status. And Chad, would you start us off with that, please?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Earthworks Group incorporated applicant on behalf of Seaside Townhomes, who is the owner, is requesting a final plat approval for Seaside single-family homes. The final plat approval would grant permission to construct and operate 16 lots for single-family residential units in Seaside Village, which is located in the mixed-use district. The subject property is located behind the existing Seaside Village townhomes that are located off of High Market Street. The subject property is approximately 2.27 acres in size and may be further identified by the parcel listed there. The staff has reviewed and approved the final plat and to be reviewed by the planning board for final approval. Attached is the staff comments and review of the final plat. Prior to issuance of a zoning permit, the final plat must be approved by the planning board in accordance with section 13.02. Based on the review, the proposed site plan is in accordance with the provisions of the town's UDO. All necessary information has been provided to the town as a prerequisite to the planning board approval. The staff comments are attached. I'll turn it back over to you. And I do have the applicant who is sitting in the second row if you have any questions for him as well.
I did not have any specific questions. I thought the presentation of the final plat was complete and easy to review. One comment, though, I'd like to make. Could you come up to the podium, please? And introduce yourself, please.
My name is Trip Neely, and I'm one of the owners, being Steve Strickland of Earthworks Group, doing this project.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that the street signs for Privateer Loop have been installed.
Yes, sir.
The one thing I did notice is as I drive from the Mexican restaurant towards the new development on High Market Street, the sign for Privateer Loop is not right at the High Market Street intersection. At least as I drove down, I was unable to see right away that that was Privateer Loop until I took the right-hand turn and then made the left-hand turn onto that part of Privateer Loop. I would assume...
Because those bushes that are out there on the
well,
point, basically.
the sign is physically located inside along Privateer Loop that would face the new homes. But it's not out, and I would assume that that is Privateer Loop that makes that 90-degree turn off of High Market Street.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to at least have town staff take a look at that, just from emergency vehicle response and the like. As you're driving down, I'd like to be able to know where Privateer Loop starts and stops.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll take a look at that and make sure that is where it's supposed to be. I've worked with the applicant on proving where the sign is, but we'll just double check to make sure. And I'll work with the owner, the applicant, and the POA to make sure that's being
good.
Sir, I was there when that was installed myself, and what I tried to do, Chad, it was a meets and bounds on the actual plat itself, showing where it was at, and I kind of questioned where we had to put it to with that little strip of grass there.
Yes.
It really could probably be better served to put it over on the other, but I wanted to put it like it was on the plat, so it wouldn't be any problem, but I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
Well, just to raise the issue, if town staff could just take a look at it for
I will do that
for a final. And we're excited about the development.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. While you're still there, the
only
rest of the
question I
planning board will
had
address it.
was we're good with the county on all the stormwater for this, right? Because it seems like a lot of, I've seen from previous looks at this property, there was multiple stormwater drains going through this to the pond. So I guess I'm sure it's in the notes here, but the county and the town is all good on the stormwater management of this property.
Yes, the town has worked with Dustin very closely, or the owner or the applicant has worked with Dustin and staff very closely to make sure that the existing stormwater infiltrations are currently kept and kept on the property and maintained. State stormwater permit has been updated in accordance with Seaside Village, and Brunswick County Engineering, Stormwater and Utilities has signed off on the final plat.
Thank you.
I do not have any questions, Pete.
Okay. Sybil?
I have nothing. I thought it was very well done.
Okay. So Chad, our next action, well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next action would be to provide a ruling for acceptance of the final plat as submitted.
Correct.
Like to entertain a motion to accept the final plat for the Seaside Village as submitted. I'd like to have a motion.
I make a motion to accept the plat for Seaside Village as submitted. Any seconds?
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Any other technicalities on that we need to address?
Yeah, just real quick, I will have, I'll stamp the final plat and have it for you this afternoon. If you want to think.
Okay, moving forward, we're now going to look at, under old business, the previously tabled from our June 2nd regular planning board meeting, the UDO amendment for Article 6, permitted uses. Chad, you want to start us off on that discussion?
Yeah, this is a continuation of a amendment that was proposed by Riptide Builders to amend Article 6, Table Uses, Section 6.04, Table of Permitted Special Uses, and Article 7, Supplemental Regulations, adding 7.37. I think at the previous meeting, you tasked the applicant with coming back with standards to address your questions. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair, as the additions were provided to staff to Section 7.37, Neighborhood Mixed Uses. It went from A and B to A, B, C, D, and E. I do have the applicant here currently, and I'll turn it back over to you for questions to the applicant and to staff if you have any.
Okay. Introduce yourself, please, Todd.
Todd Rademacher. I'm with Riptide Builders.
Thank you. Obviously, we know you.
It's good to see you guys again.
Yep. One question I had, and possibly you just elected not to do it, or maybe I misunderstood that it was going to be addressed, but I was under the impression that we were going to, or you were going to possibly look into minimum distances away from single-family homes for the specific businesses, the specific uses that the 10 of them that we were discussing.
I believe that's something Chad and I did discuss when we were looking at this, and that was brought up. And what we came up with was a little bit more specifics as in regard to location, because that seemed to be a little more in the regards of the concern of where to locate the businesses. We didn't want to see things over on Barony Place or Lakeshore Drive, things of that nature. So by trying to tie it down to specific road frontages, when talking with the planning director, we felt that the existing buffers and landscaping that is in place within the UDO would suffice to buffer properly and provide the necessary visual appeal when you drove down the street, so it would blend into the community.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So
I guess what, Chad, you're saying, well, that paragraph D, by obviously being very specific on locations, renders moot the need to have a minimum distance from any of these properties to a residential parcel? Is that what I hear Todd and you guys did, is by adding D, there is no place where it's going to abut or get close to a residential dwelling parcel, because the minutes, clearly, if you just look at the minutes we approved, it said minimum distances would be looked at. So I think on the same path that Pete is, looking for assurances here that by not including a minimum distance of, say, 50 feet or 100 feet from a residential lot, the specific location thing has covered that, or do we still need to have that in there?
This is something that the applicant has come back with that provided to me.
We did discuss that issue. We talked about having buffers. There's really, and I broke down the different parcels. There's actually 3 ownership groups, not just Riptide Builders, that this would affect. So there's a total of, there's roughly 14 properties specifically that this ordinance now, as written, would affect. Those properties are, with the exception of one property, set apart from residential buildings, or 2 properties, I should say. One already has an existing commercial structure on it, and that's our office. The other is the property directly across the street, and it's already abutting the bridge, a portion of the Club Villas apartments, townhomes, and I guess in theory, looks through to the fire department, and then has a 50-foot right of way or what have you across Clubhouse Road. Chad and I did specifically talk about that being the distance, and by the time you put in street trees, the heavy landscaping that the Sunset Beach ordinance requires, and then generally what we do beyond those requirements, you really get the buffering that you want and desire for any new construction that would take place or reuse of the building.
Chad, a housekeeping issue on our packet page, our new packet page, number 23. We have our table of uses, section 6.04, and under storage facilities, this has been reduced in size for simplicity to be able to deal with it here on this without listing all the other uses. But under storage facility, I believe that in Beach Business 1, it is a special use, and in the Mud District, it is a special use for storage facility in our existing UDO. Those two spots were omitted in the actual packet that came through here, and I wanted to make sure that we weren't removing the special use permit requirements in BB1 or in district for storage facility by this action.
And one of the things I want to go back and address before I get to that is Mr. Labruno's question. I think part B to that is one of the other things that Mr. Rademacher and I talked about is that the minimum distance, as staff has reviewed it and would be probably, I guess, comfortable with, and is discussed in the text amendment. The problem with that is that when it comes to conformities and nonconformities in relation to what's existing now, and Todd can echo me on this, it becomes a little bit difficult because of where things are located in relation to single-family residential uses providing a more than 100-foot, 50 to 100-foot distance away from a single-family residential when you look at these entities as they take shape.
Yeah, the setback becomes challenging for the existing, one building, one lot in this regard, but
What is the distance?
adjacent to a vacant residential lot.
The current structure to a lot.
The current structure to a lot distance right now is probably 50 feet.
Okay. So if it was 50 feet, it would conform.
50 feet to an existing structure, not to an existing lot.
From any of these structures to an existing residential lot.
The closest thing would be our actual office, which is adjacent to a residential lot.
Right.
And always
It has a regular setback.
Correct.
12 foot or whatever on the side might be, or I haven't been.
Honestly, off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the actual setback is off that lot. I'd have to look at the survey. That building's been there for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Really don't.
You redid it, but you haven't changed the
We worked within
footprint.
The footprint did not change during the renovation of that building.
If you end up creating, say you had we added a line here that we want 50-foot minimum between any of these structures and a residential lot, a setback. Other than creating one non-conforming, I guess what I'm trying to get is we talked about putting this in and it's not in.
Yes.
And we're saying we have one that's probably going to be non-conforming because it's existing. But I wonder, are we giving up that protection of making sure no commercial structure is built 50 feet from somebody's residential lot line?
Whether it's 50, 100,
whatever number, let's just use
whatever
50 for now.
Whatever X is.
Right.
And I'll defer back to the applicant. I'm pretty sure the only structure that would be still a non-conforming issue would be the clubhouse.
Clubhouse.
Not the clubhouse.
Our office.
The Sea Trail Retail or Sales Center. Yes. Sorry.
Well, and I think that's part of the concern, obviously, specifically to us, is the non-conforming use status. It's certainly
but that's for us to deal with.
Well, no,
we could deal with that, I think.
Right, we can deal with that.
I just don't want to find out that even though we've written that paragraph with specific locations, we find out someplace that there is a location where they can end up building a restaurant and it ends up being 25 foot from somebody's backyard. Because these things are hard to foresee, all these locations, future changes.
Sure, absolutely.
So that I was originally comfortable that we were going to include some sort of at least minimum distance that
Because
someone who owns a residential property and a house and a backyard or whatever, and there's a lot line, and then there's an empty property behind them, and if now going to have a little strip mall or something behind them, has at least some buffer.
Okay, I have,
Sybil?
I guess I'm confused. I'm really confused now because I thought we were looking at areas where we could have a group, like a restaurant, like a bookstore, like a dress shop in one area, not random things all over Sea Trail.
You have to address both, and I think one of the many conversations that Todd has had about this is not only addressing the new entities in Sea Trail, but also the existing entities in Sea Trail as well.
Right, because there are entities within Sea Trail that have been built over the past 40 years that do exist sporadically throughout the neighborhood.
Like?
Like our office, House's Place at the back,
The Mac,
the Mac,
Pink Palace.
Pink Palace, the offices for the former Sea
Chinaway.
Trail Corporation or Chinaway today.
It's a lot.
It is, but when you take over the scope and magnitude of the swath of land we're talking about, it's not as much as you think it is. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to really hone in the individual uses that we were requesting to be able to be allowed within Sea Trail. Sea Trail
Todd,
proper.
you've, not to interrupt, but just to cut to the chase, you've intentionally elected not to request the wording include any kind of a setback from an existing.
Per conversations and the meeting that we had per your request to sit down with staff, we did discuss those kinds of things and we're not given the impression that that was something that was necessary to put in this text amendment, that the existing buffers and setbacks inside the ordinance would suffice.
Because the MR3 setbacks would still, correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, would still apply because it's still MR3. We're just allowing these specific 10 uses within MR3. So the setbacks for structures, for accessory structures would still, I believe, apply.
Yeah, but the side setback's only 10% of the lot width.
Exactly.
I'm just.
I don't think that that's adequate, but I'm just, I'm getting a clarification.
And my point is, well, I don't know my point. I'm not against doing this. I mean, I think we've agreed last time that the concept of what you're trying to do is right. I just want to make sure we're not inadvertently
Missing something.
missing that some
completely
some
agree and
poor
understand.
homeowner is going to have, I don't know, a bicycle shop next in the view of his patio in his backyard just because we didn't foresee some arrangement where something could be added to a building, you know, without putting in that definite, you got to be 50, just anything you do here got to be 50 foot from a residential lot line.
I think in my personal,
Now, if we create this one non-conforming, then how do we handle that to allow that obviously to exist and continue?
I mean, you can have legal existing non-conformities.
And we
I
have
mean, they're
several
legal.
on.
So obviously we don't want to do
most of our
anything there.
ordinances.
I just want to make sure we've built in the proper protection for residential owners, that something doesn't pop up next to them that gets closer than we expected or intended.
And I think that was the intention for the applicant to include the streets, the 54 holes of golf, the commercial standards continue to be met, the buffering.
Like, can let's go through each of those A, B, C, D, E.
If I may, real quick, I want to address your question that you had for me. I mistakenly did omit that in the MUD district. I overlooked it. So in the MUD district for storage facilities, it is a special use in the MB1, MB2, and the mixed use district.
Yes.
And then it would be just for clarification point, real estate sales offices would be a move to a special use term permitted with standards. And then professional neighborhood services, storage facility, restaurants, bookstore, library would all be permitted with standards, with the other thing of restaurant moving from special use to permitted with standards.
I just didn't want to inadvertently allow something that was not on our radar. I think that Ron has an excellent point, and I'd like to revisit that.
Yes.
Jerry, do you have any specific
No, I kind of
comments?
agree with Ron. I thought that the intent was, I think we'd love to see the growth, but let's make sure we do it the right way.
Yeah.
One comment I had, Sybil, did you have anything else to add
No,
to
I
that?
was agreeing with him.
I will say this before you go into that is that I did make sure that this was compliant with 160D, and it does.
Okay.
So the language you have in front of you would still make it legal from a general statute standpoint as well.
Under A, allowable in neighborhoods with 54 holes of golf. You revised that from the 36.
Correct, and
per
that's
our
the
discussion.
Yes,
last
first time anybody's ever, I say anybody, the first time here in Sunset Beach where those 3 golf courses would actually be beholden to something, or something else would be beholden to the golf courses and encourage them to thrive and stay open. Currently, you have a state stormwater permit that protects the Jones and Bird courses and prevents them from ever being developed because they're considered the open space for the actual residential development, commercial developments. However, the Maples course was created prior to the existence of a state stormwater permit being active. So this would create an opportunity to put a level of protection on the Maples course, which I think is near and dear to most people's hearts.
I understand that that's your thinking, yes. Under B, all commercial requirements shall be met for any proposed use. Of course, we're talking about these specific 10 uses. By commercial requirements, what do you mean? Are you talking about things like the supplemental regulations, like
parking,
spot for
landscaping,
3 tables
lighting,
and 3 seats, or you're talking about the supplemental
the
regulations?
supplemental regulations
that
for lighting,
exist.
parking, landscaping, things of those that nature that you would
Trash cans.
Yeah, everything that you would ever do for any commercial building, you would still need to be done for these properties.
Okay, my attention jumped on your C item, which is minimum lot size of 1 acre, except for storage facilities, which may meet the minimum lot size requirements for an MR3 zoning district. The 1 acre.
Why is that?
Well, I want to understand what we mean by, or what we'll be agreeing to by 1 acre here. Are we talking about 1 acre area that you then can put 3 of these uses in? Are you talking, you're certainly not talking about 1 acre for each of these uses.
No, that is just a minimum lot size to even be able to present any of these uses. You could build a unit that had a restaurant and a golf service entity, or a restaurant and a library, or a restaurant and a bookstore, a restaurant and a golf practice facility. Those kinds of things could commingle in one 1 acre site.
Turning to Chad, right now for multi-family developments, don't we have a requirement for like 40,000?
40,000 square feet.
So that's in line with that.
Correct.
That's almost an acre.
But it's
So
all special use.
Yes, I know. I'm just trying to wrap my head around.
It
this
is
whole
now.
this
Even
whole
before it was
presentation.
special use, it was still a 40,000.
Yeah, it's still 40,000, but now it's a special use permit
Correct.
required for
Correct.
multifamily. We're talking about shall have street frontage on Clubhouse Road. Well, I won't read each of the streets, but there's several streets here that we're all familiar with.
Correct. And that, like I said, that limits it to 3 current property owners and roughly 14 individual properties spread throughout Sea Trail. Some with most of those having existing structures.
Now
on them
that
today.
Birdwatch has been developed, if Birdwatch hadn't been already developed, that would be another area along Clubhouse Road where you'd be able to, or an applicant would be able to put
In theory,
these uses.
yes. And of course, Track 7 has already been approved by the Planning Board and Town Council for residential development, and Track 6, which is another large parcel, which I didn't even consider either of those tracks.
All right, a question for Chad. Applicants have put in requests, if you will, for various tracks to develop within the MR3 UDO as we have it today. Would an applicant that has already submitted a application for a tract be able to halt that, and now if this were approved, come back in and put these 10 uses, in other words, what would be the word?
Purpose.
Repurpose, thank you, that in 1 acre lots? Would they be able to do that, withdraw what they have and put something new in?
Yes. However, it would have to come back to this board for approval.
But I would suspect that with this existing in hard copy,
For new development?
we would not have a reason for, it would be a
so
right.
Two parts to this. One, you have a previously approved preliminary plat, for example. That would then have to be altered, then have to come back before this board for approval of that alteration. Second part to this is what's not existing. So new entities would then, most of them would probably be, assuming probably 90 to 99.9 of them would be major site development plans that would then have to be approved by this board.
But again, they would have a right to put that in. There'd have to
Permitted
be
by
a reason.
right.
We can't just say, no, we don't like the fact that you're going to
Correct.
put a wine shop there.
Correct.
That's not acceptable.
Outside of the
It's
special
not
use
legitimate.
process, if it meets the standards of the UDO, you are correct.
But under a special use permit, as would exist today, except for the ones that aren't allowed in our uses, going before the Board of Adjustment, that would be a site-specific evaluation.
Yes, but also you would then evaluate it against the land use plan as well. So
yes,
that's correct.
Yes.
And I think looking at the larger tracks, they're not in areas, with the exception of a little bit of frontage on each, a little bit of frontage on each one. The minute you have to subdivide a road into there, you lose the ability to operate one of those parcels for a commercial use, based on the road frontage requirement here. That's a big deal. Sea Trail isn't designed to be a commercial subdivision.
Right.
That's certainly not anybody's desire. The declaration calls for track 6, track 7 to be designed for residential uses, not for commercial uses.
Yeah, but that could change. That's nothing. We don't have control over that as a town.
Certainly. But to think that 15 acres or 30 acres is prime commercial development land, is not really a viable project. We're doing everything in our power here to build a residential component. The whole goal of everything we're doing is to put residents in this community who can support the limited amount of commercial that we're trying for. I mean, if we wanted to develop a track 6 or track 7 for commercial development, we would have just gone with a request for a commercial rezoning, but that's certainly in no way, shape, or form the intent. We understand that residential golf course communities are what Sunset Beach needs. It's what Sunset Beach wants. It's what's going to push Sea Trail and the community forward into the future.
And the public comments obviously supported that.
Sure, which I absolutely 100% appreciated that. But in no way, shape, or form is that something that, I mean, if you wanted to put, I think we'd be open to anything, over 5 acres in size to be a commercial development is certainly a reasonable.
You mean instead of the 1 acre?
No. If it's over 5 acres in size, let it come back as a conditional use permit. But I think, to do a 1 acre or 2 acre, 3 acre, what have you, commercial development, you're certainly trying to put the services back into the community that were always wanted, always desired, always needed to get the entirety of this mass resort package that we're kind of having to land plan backwards.
I hear you,
which is tricky.
I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
Chad, one of the streets that comes up here is Angels Trace Road. On the north end of Angels Trace Road, as it ties into Old Georgetown Road, that is not an area that I believe Riptide or the applicant has involvement.
The north side of Angels Trace. No, that's
yes,
Mark Saunders.
I'll call it Jaguar's Lair.
Yeah, that's Jaguar's Lair.
Yes. Now, this would open up that to that whole area, the north half, if you will, or
Believe that portion of Jaguar's Lair is already subdivided, and those golf courses can no longer be developed as part of the settlement that was reached whenever the town had that settlement agreement.
I'm not familiar with.
But I know they
the
cannot
settlement
develop.
agreement, but-
They cannot develop what was the former Angels Trace golf course, and that's part of the original phase 180C.
I'm not sure that's the
I don't know. I mean, I can't
I'm not
really
sure. I don't
comment
think
on
that's
that
the
because I just
case.
don't know anything about
That
it.
that section's been approved. That whole corner in that area is approved Angels Trace development. It may not be recorded, but there are lots that, because they did the reservation process and sales before anything
the
was ever
original
built.
area, but there's a huge, well, I don't, this applicant really doesn't need to be in that conversation.
Well,
but,
I do, because it goes back to Angels Trace Road, and if that area adjacent to Angels Trace Road is subdivided, which it is, or under development review, I say review, it's already been
It's
blessed.
not yet.
Yeah, it kind of
But
is.
even,
It's
but
been
e-
submitted.
But
Yeah.
even though, I mean, I guess I don't see why we would care. As long as, I'm back to, as long as the protections are built in for the residential folks. If they got a parcel of land over there and they want to put up a little strip mall or something, I guess, I don't know, or I don't know why you would when there's no, if there's, but as long as the protections and the buffers are in there for the residential folks,
Again,
that'll
you
cross
also
the
have
bridge when it comes.
And Angels Trace Road is going to be a busy road one day. When that sucker gets opened back up, that's going to be a highly traveled road.
No question.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's going to be a busy road. That won't be a neighborhood scale road for sure.
and keep in mind, you know,
So-
along Angels Chase Road, if it becomes a business corridor again, it currently as it sits right now, part of it is zoned MUD, where the majority of it is zoned MR3.
Right.
And allowances in the table uses address what is allowed and what is not allowed in the table uses, Article 6, in each zoning
Yeah,
district.
but any of these 10 could be put in there.
Sure. I mean,
And
there are provisions and rules.
Ron, I'm
that go
trying
along with
to
it.
see what is on the other side of the steps we're taking.
Yeah.
And we have that responsibility to the town. Okay. Anybody have any additional questions for the applicant regarding this UDO amendment for permitted uses? Do you have anything to add, Chad, to kind of button this up?
To button it up, I will. So moving forward, as you look at ruling, however the board is going to do this, for clarification, I ask that you make two motions. One of them being a recommendation for or against the text, and then the same thing, and then make a separate motion.
And you're talking about the planning board summary action, A or B?
No, I'm talking about the text. I'm talking about
Page 24?
yeah.
Packet
So
page
your
24.
table uses, the redlined items
Mhm.
for the table uses and the 7.37. I ask that you make a motion for the text, then a separate motion for the planning board summary to make sure that is clear for one on the record and for the clerk and for staff when they go back and review this, that what each motion is made of.
Okay, as a part of discussion, and I'm sure we all have our own opinions as to the features, benefits, future, the advantages. I think all of us in prior conversations have, with other applicants, have all supported focused and controlled growth. We've all supported businesses and how important they are to not only sales taxes, but in providing facilities and amenities for our citizens so that they don't have to go to Calabash to eat, etc.
But also, if you don't mind me interrupting.
No, and I'm not finished, but please.
I know you're never
Go ahead.
finished.
Go ahead.
We want to protect the people. We want to protect the homeowners. That's really a major part of our job. And that, whereas it looks like we are discussing everything to death, it's because we want to be here for you.
We have a administrative procedure for acceptance or rejection of applications for special uses within all of our zoning districts. MR3 is what we're talking about here. And as I had previously stated, the Board of Adjustment is a quasi-governmental board appointed by town council here to evaluate site-specific situations where an applicant comes in and wants to do something that is different than what is outlined and approved in our existing UDO. And then the Board of Adjustment looks at it and says, putting type of use, if you will, A, onto lot Z, they get to look at exactly where it is. They get to look at exactly the shape and size and function. They get to look at adjacent neighbors and the situations that could develop, whether they're positive or negative for those adjacent property owners. And that's what I'm leaning towards, is not approving this applicant submission, but relying on our existing special use permit process. And I'll read from what you said, Todd, at our prior June 2nd meeting, where you talked about special use permits. The special use permit process provides the opportunity to add reasonable additional conditions, but not the carte blanche to deny a project. And I agree with that. Our Board of Adjustment cannot just say no. They have to have specific reasons. They've got very specific special use permit standards for accepting or rejecting a special use submittal. And so it doesn't give them the ability to carte blanche deny something. And that's what I'm leaning towards, is relying on that existing method.
I want to also be clear that you, as a board, will be making a recommendation. This has to go to town council.
I know.
All right. So you will be making a recommendation of approval or a recommendation of denial of the text as it is written to the town council for ultimate and final
If we
ruling.
approve it, then town council could approve or deny it. If we deny it, town council can overrule us and approve it.
Either way, they have to accept it as you've sent it to them,
I know.
schedule a public hearing, and then ultimately make a rule as a final.
Yes. And the town council would also have the benefit of the input from our public comments that were overwhelmingly in support of accepting this.
And also the applicant will be there to address any questions to the council along with staff.
Ron?
I guess as a final comment, I get where I started, I guess. I'm overall in favor of the concept. I think it's an unusual burden on what we're talking about here to send this all to the Board of Adjustment. But, I mean, so I would like to be able to approve that. Is there can we go back to where we were and add some of that minimum setback to this?
It's okay with the applicant.
I mean, can we add a line that says the minimum setback is 50 foot from any residential lot?
If the applicant agrees, yes.
If I may, I think 50 foot is slightly excessive based on the size of the properties that we're talking about there. I mean, 50 foot's huge. I mean, that's like the size of a right of way.
It's the same setback to the road.
Right, but that's even beyond. It's fine, and I'm fine with that.
I believe that's MR3 is a 25-foot setback.
25 foot.
MR1 and 2 is 50. Right?
Yeah.
But Because again, well,
Well, you're talking about a 1 acre lot to begin with, so.
Correct.
It's not as if you're trying to fit it on an existing.
We're talking about a
10,000
1 acre
square
lot
foot
with
lot for MR3.
correct. Correct. Yeah. And certainly if we ever decided to do something with that building beyond, we would certainly, I would rather do enhanced buffers in that area, require it to be 50% opaque, 75% opaque buffers that'll act as a visual as well as a sound buffer. I think that would be a
Right.
more beneficial,
But
especially in
if
C-Trail.
we add that item F, let's just use 50 for now. We can discuss the number. And that would then make these, as the table adjusted with the fixes, uses that you could do. If there was a case where you couldn't do the 50, you would still have Pete's way to go to the Board of Adjustment and get that site-specific permit then.
In other words, get it reduced by the Board of
Right.
Adjustment.
If,
Yes.
I would,
Sorry.
okay,
Let's get
we
some
have
input
this,
from someone.
we have this amendment in front of us.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we should go one way or the other. I move to approve it. And I would like a second.
Are you making a motion?
Yeah.
So you're making a motion.
I made a motion.
Because I would have made a motion in the opposite, but please, you have the floor.
I made
state
a
your-
motion to approve it as it's written.
On packet page 24 of our agenda,
Yes. Yes.
you would need a second.
Then I guess it didn't pass.
Not hearing a second.
well, then I would like to make a motion to add a line F,
A what?
add an item F to this text
Okay.
to approve with adding a minimum setback. With that, to accept it with that modification.
Minimum setback all the way around.
Correct.
Well,
Minimum distance of 50 feet.
Minimum
Yes.
distance. It's not really a setback, yes.
All the way around or adjacent to?
To any residential lot line.
Yeah, it can't be all the way around because they already have a 25-foot
Yeah.
requirement on the street frontage.
I guess I'm deferring to Chad down there to write to at least verbalize the correct wording on that.
I'm going to speak this, and as long as the applicant is okay, a minimum distance of 50 feet from any single-family residential lot.
Yes. No?
I'm okay with it. I guess just in the bounds of the overall concept of what we're trying to get across. I think 50 feet is at least 50% more than it probably needs to be. I think enhanced buffers.
Give me a number.
Probably 20 feet, 25 feet, if you want to match the front setback of the MR3 district, but
25
include make sure that it has a 75% opaque buffer on that, at least 75% opaque buffer. Because I think the visual and sound barrier that you get from that, I think that's what you actually are trying to attain, is some sort of visual barrier, some sort of sound barrier.
Correct.
In that area. And I think I think with that would be a lot better. And if there was, for whatever reason, a need to amend, you're correct. There is a procedure for that through the Board of Adjustment to prove a hardship.
So I can amend my motion to adding a 25-foot minimum distance with proper buffering.
I will second that.
Chad, help us with that language.
All right, so it would be as it's submitted in the table uses section 0.04. Real estate sales management office in separate building would be moved from a special use permitted with standards. Professional neighborhood services would be allowed, permitted with standards. Storage facilities would be allowed, permitted with standards. Restaurants would move from a special use to a permit with standards. Bookstore would be allowed as a permitted with standards. Libraries would be allowed via permitted with standards, all in accordance with the newly section of 7.337 in Article 7, as it's submitted A, B, C, D, and E, adding F, minimum distance of 25 feet from any single-family residential lot.
Lot line.
Todd?
Lot line or structure? I just want to
Lot
make
line.
sure. That's fine.
Lot boundary, whatever you want to call it.
It is what it is. I don't love it, but it is what it is.
So that would be the motion for the text, and then you would then need to make a separate motion for the consistency statement. And then, so Mr. LeBruno made a motion, Mr. Jerry made a
Seconded.
Seconded, yes. So now we just need to vote on
Any
the
more,
text.
any more discussion? Well, we vote on each thing separately, don't we?
So you'll need to call all in favor.
No more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I oppose.
And then you'll need to, planning board summary.
Passes 3-1.
Yep, as the.
So I have to then read action A because
Correct.
we're recommending approval.
Correct.
On packet page 25 of today's July 7th agenda, planning board summary, action A, that the planning board hereby recommends approval of the proposed amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance and finds that it is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, 2017 Town of Sunset Beach Land Use Plan, to allow proposed non-residential uses in I won't change the wording, but we're talking about specific MR3 zoning district, and finds that it is in the public interest because the proposal is in accordance with the goals and citizen desires as outlined in the 2017 land use plan. Entertain a motion to accept that as approved.
Motion to approve as stated.
I will second it.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Opposed. The summary passes 3-1.
Thank you.
Chad, you're welcome. We appreciate your two-meeting
I'm not done yet.
tolerance with us. No, that's another topic.
I got one more.
Yeah, that's another topic.
Exactly.
The final agenda item we have for today's meeting, which is the same applicant. Consideration of amendment for Land Use Plan Chapter 9. And again, for the benefit of those on YouTube and here in our audience, as well as the planning board, here we're not trying to amend the Unified Development Ordinance. We're here to amend the land use plan. Certainly a different document, although they coexist together. Chad, would you please launch this for us?
Yes. I want to kind of break this up into two parts. So the first one, I know you're going to have general questions on how this process works, and I'm going to try to clarify all this for you before we move to questions to the applicant. All right, so China Way Corporate Development and Riptide Builders, can I say that? That was okay. Has submitted a text amendment to amend the Town of Sunset Beach's 2017 Land Use Plan, Chapter 9, Future Land Use Classifications, Maps, and Guidelines in the mixed use part of this. Planning staff has had multiple meetings and conversations with Riptide Builders, Mr. Rademacher, LCC Community Planner, and Public Relations staff member on a text amendment that would modify the land use classification for mixed use in Chapter 9 of the Town of Sunset Beach's 2017 Land Use Plan, along with the map and guidelines. As the Town of Sunset Beach's 2017 Land Use Plan is currently written, parcel 242-0000954 is classified as recreation. Per the future land use map, recreational uses according to the land use plan allow preserved open space, active and passive recreational uses, golf courses and amenities, nature trails, parks, piers, docks, nature centers. Inappropriate uses are non-residential and residential development. In conversations I've had with the applicant, the desire is to reclassify the tract of land to the mixed-use future land use classification. On the adjacent properties, the first phase of the Champions has been constructed when it consists with multifamily residential development. On the other adjacent property is a golf course clubhouse for the Jones and Bird golf courses. See Figure 1, which is the map that is provided for you. Any questions so far?
Mm-mm.
All right. Reclassification of this parcel to mixed use, along with adding multifamily to the desired uses, MR3 to the acceptable zoning classifications, and striking through the sentence prohibition of a standalone multifamily residential development in favor for upper story residential and vertical mixed use structure is requested by the applicants as part of the amendment.
Can I call a timeout?
Yes.
So they're asking for two things here. One, change the classification of the parcel.
Yes.
From recreation to mixed use.
Correct.
And then they're asking for a second item to change the description of mixed use.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we should address those separately.
Okay. We will. And because this is going to feel a little.
Or as the applicant say, A and B must go together.
Yes. And I'll clarify all that as I move through this, because I know there's going to be questions. This is an application to amend the text of the Town of Sunset Beach's land use plan. The applicant has requested both a modification to the land use map and to the narrative section for mixed use future land use classification. 1, reclassify parcel 242.0000954 from recreational to mixed use. Ron, that answers 1. 2, under the mixed use future land use classification in Chapter 9, adding mixed use as the desired use at MR3 to add MR3 to acceptable zoning classifications and strike through the prohibition of standalone multifamily residential in the favor of upper story residential and vertical niche. Those will be the two things that we are going to rule on today.
As a housekeeping item, if anybody besides me is cold, I just got chastised because I launched to turn the air conditioning down a little bit or up a little bit, but they're working on our HVA system here in Town Hall. So
that's why
she
that
told
guy
me,
kept coming in and pushing the buttons.
Don't touch it.
I also have provided the existing land use plan narrative and maps. So you have the 2017 land use priorities and goals. You have the goals and what is allowed for recreation as it is written now, mixed use as it is written now, a copy of the land use plan current map, a copy of the zoning map as it exists now. Staff's proposal is for the planning board to review and propose amendment to make a recommendation to town council. The proposed plan amendment is as stated in 1 and 2 previously or above. So this is going to feel like a rezoning of a piece of land, and it is not.
You're going to tell us it's not.
It is not.
Oh, really?
Because
why shouldn't it be?
Yeah.
Because it is, as it is currently sits now, going back to the Unified Development Ordinance, it is zoned MR3.
Right, but it can be rezoned.
It can be rezoned.
So why don't we take the simple approach?
It is not a rezoning. It is a text amendment and reclassification of the land because the land is currently not recreational, nor is it currently mixed use. It is zoned MR3.
Yes.
And that's where it's going to be confusing because it is going to feel like a rezoning as we talk through this, but it is not. It is a reclassification of land because that is what the land use plan classifies it as it is now, and that is recreation. All right, so we're looking to say that. Go ahead.
It's zoned one, but classified another?
You have to take both into consideration, but you have to take the UDO out of this because you're looking at the land use plan.
Okay.
So that's why
So it's
Well-
recreation if it's land use.
Yes.
And, okay.
So when looking at the land use plan, it is, as it sits now, classified as recreational. The applicant is asked and is seeking amendment of this document to go from recreational to mixed use and amend the mixed use section in Chapter 9 of the land use plan to add multifamily standalone multifamily as a desired use, applicable zoning districts adding MR3, and then striking through the first sentence and implementation considerations.
Chad, does that
So then I'll turn it over.
Does that have a spillover effect in our MB2 area, which is a multi-use district, and also with the village at Sunset Beach, which is a MUD district? Does that mean that the words that we're adding and or striking here would spill over into what we call the MUD district now, the village at Sunset Beach, and also the multi-use district, which is MB2?
So the applicable zoning districts in mixed use are currently MB1, MB2, and MUD. So yes, it would. But because the reason why is not because adding the MR3 zoning classification, it would be because you're adding a desired use of multifamily residential and striking through the being able to prohibit of standalone multifamily residential development in favor of upper story residential and vertical mixed use structure. You're striking through that.
Does this also spill over into MR3? And I'll give you an example. We're talking about this one tract of land, which you've listed the lot parcel number, and we all know where that is. But there could be another parcel number that I decide I want to own, and I could then come back to the planning board and I say, I want to be able to do what they did. I would look at the planning board as not really having a leg to stand on to say no to me when they said yes to them.
I mean,
right now we're looking at a site-specific parcel.
That's anything. That is anything that ever comes before you. I mean, you have the right to, and that's why existing case law exists, not in just this room, but also in the state of North Carolina and in this country, is for existing cases to, we're talking about this specific land as it sits in front of you. The other thing that will probably help is that you've been given 2 maps from GIS layers.
Yes.
This is how it sits existing.
And you have the new one.
And then the new one of how it
And the
would
shape
look
of
now.
the parcel didn't change at all.
No.
It's
Correct.
the same
It
parcel.
is, yeah.
A question for the applicant. On the far north end, there's a little jut out of this particular parcel that backs up onto folks that live on Crooked Gully.
Correct.
Abrams property.
There's a vacant lot, and then there's one other lot that has an existing single-family residential home on it.
Mhm.
And of course, then there's lots on either side of them that would be at least in visual of this development as it may turn out to be. If I lived there, and I think what Sybil said before is one of our obligations is to protect uniformity of our existing property owners here in the town, citizens. I'd be concerned if I owned one of those lots. With us now coming, and I look at it, for the record, as spot zoning. And I know what you said, and I know that I respect your background as a planner, which I do not have. I look at it as spot zoning. I look at it as we're taking this parcel of land and allowing it to act as another zoning district than the MR3 that it is right now. And we're not only doing that, but we're tweaking the multi-use district zone because the applicant has requested we do that for this specific parcel.
I think you have to be careful with the word rezoning, and you have to use classification.
I know you've warned me about that and warned
Now,
us about
the
it. But
second part of that, yes, you're correct. You're asking to tweak or amend the mixed use portion of Article 9 or Chapter 9. Even I'm getting them mixed up. But again, I know this is going to look, I honestly, sometimes I use the phrase, if it looks like a dog, it smells like a dog, it barks like a dog, it's probably a dog. In this case,
This is a
it's
cat.
not. So it's not a rezoning, it is a reclassification of land. I mean, and Todd and I spent countless hours in my office and on the phone because it felt like a rezoning to us both when we first started looking at this. And then we had to change the phrase to reclassification because it does say, when you read through our Chapter 9 of the land use plan, it does say it uses the word classification of land
I know.
and not zoning.
And I'll go back to what Ron said, because that, I agree completely. This is complicated.
Sure.
Where the applicant is asking to reclassify it from MR3 to mixed use, and then change the mixed use recommendations.
Recreational.
Yes, recreational.
In the land use plan.
But
I know I'm spilling over between the
Yes.
UDO and the land use plan.
And it's going to be difficult. It's going to be complicated because we are in the UDO every day. Right?
Can-
Yes.
Can I, Kara asks that we have the applicant make their case before us first, and then we can continue discussion on what they're asking for specifically to do and why.
But
And then we can pick up
I agree.
the discussion, not that we're ending it now. We got a question.
We're
now.
going to turn it
But
over
I'd
to
like
Todd.
to let the applicant make their case of why they're doing this and why they're doing
Sybil
it
and Jerry, we're going to talk first, and then you'll have the floor, Todd. Thank you for being patient with us.
Love it.
all right. Number one, when I came back on the planning board and I was interviewed by town council, one of the first questions they asked me is, did I support the land use plan? Okay, and I said yes, and I do. But now you're telling me the land use plan, which in my mind came about because they wanted the people's input, and the land use plan came from the citizens of Sunset Beach, what they wanted. Now you're saying, well, change that because that's not working for what we want it to work for.
It is, the answer to that question is like the UDO, like the risk vulnerability assessment that we have. And this document, it is a living, breathing document. It can be altered, proposed to be altered and amended.
Yeah, it's going to be updated pretty soon, too.
Potentially, yes.
That was going to be my next thing. I think that it should be updated regularly, every 5 years.
5 years, yeah, it's supposed to be, yeah.
So, and when we can address that part at later on.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm through.
Jerry?
To Ron's point, I think last time when we all got together on those 10 specific issues that you want to do or different retail, that we said, okay, it was great. I think it's a great idea, but we need to investigate a little more exactly what you're planning, where you're planning. So I am going to go with that again, though this is recreation, I understand, but I would like to see more details of what exactly Riptide, and to support the lovely people in the room here.
So, are you ready? Me?
Please.
Okay.
Who are you?
Todd Rademacher, Riptide Builders, Sunset Beach, North Carolina. So Sybil, yes, you are correct. This is something that the citizens looked at back in 2016, 2017.
17.
Well,
adopted in 17.
It
sure.
was done in 16, adopted in 17.
That parcel of land this parcel of land that we're specifically talking about was originally approved for the Champions Condo project. That is actually where the continuation of Champions Condos is supposed to be. I think there's another 4 to 6 buildings that are supposed to go on that piece of property as it was originally laid out. Researching it, nobody really is sure how it ended up as recreational, as opposed to more in line with what was truly happening on that property, what's laid out in the declaration, what was laid out on the approved plans from the town, and the desires of the developers and folks back then. Obviously, a portion of Champions got built. I'm assuming it probably got lost in the bankruptcy or the downturn in the economy back in '07 and what have you.
One of our speakers used to live there.
Correct. As have many residents in Sunset Beach over the years. It's a good transition place, vacation, move permanently. That being said, now that we've purchased this piece of property, we have equitable interest in this property. There is a submitted plan in the development agreement that I can share. Specifically, has a future land use for this property to hold 2 more Champion style buildings. That, to your point, buffer the residential developments back there on that little spit of land that's back there. And that's actually where the golf cart path connects to the holes. So you'd have the Champions building that would act as a buffer from the convention center and the Jonesburg clubhouse. Then you'd have a driving range, which would get moved because we've already approved the
Gulls Landing.
Track 7 Gulls Landing. So the driving range would move over there and you get the full blown state of the art driving range facility and what have you. And then the idea is to put a more specifically designed for perpetuity to continue the success of the convention center and the golf entities, a hotel on that site, something along the lines of what you'd see at like Olmsted Village, Homewood Suites in Pinehurst, or the Mayfair Town Center project in Wilmington, that upscale but low key hotel experience there that would allow for nonstop operation and continuation of success for those projects. So we're looking at 2 more Champions buildings, which I think house around roughly 16 units per building, if I'm not mistaken, which is a reduction from the original. Then a hotel, low key, low scale, in harmony with the existing convention center, and a driving range on that facility. Obviously, portion of the track 2 also is where my mind's blanking me. What's it called? Used to be housed there. The exhibition hall at one time was also on this property.
The tent?
Yeah, the big. I never saw it in use, but whatever used to be housed there was housed there. So it's all part of an overall scheme or project goal for the raising up or uplifting of the entire Sea Trail resort. So it becomes, everything can come back to life with us, with our partners, with all the equitable interests that are involved, and all put the millions of dollars that are necessary to get the buildings looking right.
And hopefully our zero setback approval,
It's all
the last
part-
meeting
Yes.
helps that.
Yes. And when looking at the land use plan and going through the different high density, which we want to stay away from the word and the uses of high density as much as possible. Nobody wants high density. When Chad and I were going through this, we looked at mixed use and we saw that, like you were talking about the mud district. Well, there was already lots of multifamily existing in the mud district that does not have commercial on the ground floor and residential on the top 2 floors. So we saw it as an opportunity, or I saw it as an opportunity to incorporate MR3, get the neighborhood mixed use area compliant with the land use plan or in harmony with the land use plan, as well as whether it was an oversight or what have you on the track that's inside Sea Trail that's truly designed to be the supporting parcel for the convention center and those commercial entities near Jonesburg Clubhouse back on track so it could be that kind of supporting piece of the Sea Trail puzzle.
Todd, I mean, I know I'm interrupting your flow, but
no, you're fine.
We keep referring to the convention center, but you have no obligation to maintain that as a convention center. You could turn it into something else.
Something else very specific to the limited uses that were recommended today, or the extremely narrow uses of a convention center or a clubhouse that are outlined in the ordinance today.
Yes, I realize.
Regardless of the land use plan changes. But there aren't.
But our approval here doesn't guarantee that a convention center is going to be vibrant, exist at all, or be vibrant. And
No, but they're all building blocks. They're all building blocks that
agree.
lead to the
I agree.
success. And moving forward and ensuring that those building blocks are there in tandem with development, which I know is, it's hard right now in this economy, and I say economy, in this environment where everybody is building. We got the largest segment of the population ever retiring at the same time, and it's bringing a lot of change, not just to Sunset Beach, but all up and down all resort communities everywhere in the United States. But we have an existing convention center. We have existing golf courses. We have massive clubhouses that were designed to all work in harmony with each other, and they're not. We have the ability, we have the planning, we have the resources to start to bring these things back in tandem with other folks who also have an equitable interest in doing so. And it all ends up, we're not talking about, there's a great fear of what could potentially go sideways. Well, we're not looking to take anything sideways. We're not looking to put a car dealership or an office building that's going to, change the character or the flavor of Sea Trail. Riptide specifically, we're a golf course, or we're a residential home builder, and our goal is to have a successful golf course, because that is what we're selling to our customers, and that's what they want, and that's what the people of Sunset Beach want. We get that. We understand that. We want to see that succeed. This is just one small piece of that pie to make sure that that happens moving forward. I really can't speak to why it's recreational right now. In the grand scheme of what Sea Trail always was intended to be, what it was held on to, what it was approved for in the past. All is very similar, and probably this is to a lesser degree what we're proposing down the road to ensure that it can support the convention center and can support those golf courses. And on a very narrow scale, just on this one parcel. This isn't going to affect anybody in Sandpiper Bay. This won't affect anybody in Oyster Point or anything like that. We have one 15.11 acre tract of land, literally in the heart of Sea Trail, surrounded by golf holes, multifamily, a 45,000 square foot convention center, and a monster clubhouse.
And some single family.
Behind it. Yeah.
One
Well,
or two lots.
So if I could interrupt you for 2 points of clarification. One, I want to make sure that everybody is aware that this is not part of the golf course. It is adjacent to the golf course, but not part of the golf course.
I'm clear on that.
The second part I want to say is that what you're looking at is, if you take into consideration the UDO, and as multifamily sits currently right now as a special use permit across the board.
That's going to be my next question.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what you're looking at, so let's say if XYZ developer comes in on a tract of land that is classified in the long range land use plan as recreational, and say, I want to put multifamily or anything to that, multifamily or anything like that on it, is if it meets the standards of the UDO, that's great. But ultimately, it could be looked at that it is not consistent with the land use plan. It ultimately could be denied. So the applicant has requested that this be looked at as from a recreational to a reclassification of land where the champions or whatever project moves forward as far as multifamily could be moved forward on this tract of land and not be deemed recreational, but more as a mixed use.
Couldn't that have happened anyway? If the town already had a petition for more than the 6 existing champion buildings, let's say there were 10, I'm making that number up, we could not prevent those additional 4 champion buildings from being built.
Yes, you could. I mean, you can't look at petitions anymore. I think there was some case law saying that you can.
Yeah, that's right.
Can't look at petitions anymore as a is a legal document to some
You
degree.
mean a vested right or?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, I mean, ultimately, let's say XYZ developer comes in and say, I want to put 4, 5, 6, or just multifamily in general on a lot that's classified as recreational. You could approve it, but there's also a what's the word I'm looking for?
But Chad, it's a special use permit.
Sure.
We painfully went through that within the
did.
last year.
And
However,
part of that didn't take into consideration the land use plan characteristics of the town. The zoning ordinance, yes, conditional use permit. The land use plan and what the Board of Adjustment takes into consideration, whether or not to approve or deny,
it takes into consideration the land use plan.
that you have to look at it as, or you are supposed to look at it as recreational.
So you
The parcel that's the heart of the Jonesburg and the convention center and was always designed for that. It was always meant to be supportive of the convention center and the Jonesburg clubhouses. Always.
So as something goes before the Board of Adjustments, I do a staff report just like I do for y'all. All right. For special use, also add in there where you don't see it because it's not most of the time not necessary, because to this board, if it meets the standards of the UDO, you must take a look at it and approve it. Text amendments are different. But when it comes to a special use permit before the Board of Adjustments, not only is the standards of the UDO taken into consideration, but there's also policies and the classification of land that's taken into consideration to look at approving the body of work that is being presented in front of them. If it is inconsistent, if there are inconsistencies of policies and reclassifications of land, it gives the ground for the Board of Adjustment to ultimately deny a permit to not exist, even if it does meet all the standards of the UDO. All right. So they can approve it, even though it is inconsistent with the land use plan.
The land use plan is advisory, where the UDO is law.
Correct.
I hate to say law.
But when you look at policies and there can be inconsistencies, they can ultimately, if there's inconsistencies found in policies that are not supporting of the project, when it comes to a special use, the Board of Adjustment has the capability to deny a permit.
And this request does not take away the going before the
Board of Adjustment, nor does it take away the project fully meeting the standards of the UDO.
So, back to where I started. Okay. This parcel is zoned MR3.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
All day.
Okay, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any problem with that. In the land use plan is classified recreation.
Correct.
For some reason.
All day. For some reason, yes, sir.
So, and I have no objection. I will have little or no objection to changing that classification to another classification.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a new one.
Okay.
Another new one.
Which may be mixed use or may be some version of residential.
Okay.
But what I do have the objection to, I think, is there's the two other things that are going on in this part of the page is scrapping the limitation for vertical, the residential on top of commercial, going to, well, I see here is request for freestanding attached multifamily buildings, whether it's 2 or whatever, right? What they're saying is they want to be able to put 2 or more freestanding attached multifamily buildings on that property. Not to be limited by this vertical mixed use limitation in the land use plan. And that I may have some objections to or not. I may be sold if there's a limit to size. Even if you look at our last minutes, we disapprove, we're all over on multifamily, whether it's 4, 8, 10, giving some allowance for permitted uses versus even this whole 4 sets of minutes. You see that there's different, we've talked about it in the UDO update 3 different ways. But anyway, and then what really bugs me or makes me nervous is the applicable zoning classifications. is putting that comma and adding MR3 into there, which to me, I'm not comfortable with because I cannot, in my mind, fathom
You
what are we
unpack at
doing.
page 55, so I'm following you.
What we're on page 55.
Okay.
What that does to all the other MR3 in the town in the ETJ by putting that in there? Is that just opening up a whole new?
As far as multifamily goes, I believe it does.
When if we do nothing today other than say we approve reclassifying parcel XYZ from recreation to another classification, mixed use or some residential. Stop. If some owner of that property wants to put up a standalone multifamily attached building there, they can go before the Board of Adjustment, make their pitch, and because now it's no longer in recreation and land use, if the Board of Adjustment feels that's okay, they can just approve it then. I don't see why we need to make all these other changes to the text of the land use plan.
So anybody zoned MR3 right now, with the exception of this parcel, can ask for that conditional use permit.
Yes.
Special use.
Special
use.
Special.
Including the owner of this parcel, if it was not recreation.
This is the only parcel
so
classified as recreation.
So if it gets reclassified out of recreation, it's the same as any other MR3 parcel.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I don't know why we need to go beyond that.
And I'm thinking of things like the Oyster Bay Golf Course. However, the Oyster Bay Golf Course is MR2.
MR2.
It's not MR3.
Portions of it.
Portions of it, yes.
Portions.
Well, there's no part of the golf course at Oyster Bay that is MR3. The housing lots are all MR3. The golf course at Oyster Bay is not MR3. It's MR2.
Right.
All the golf holes. Because what I would hate to see is us opening up the can of worms that allows the Oyster Bay Golf Course to morph into what this specific parcel that we're talking about here would morph into.
So I know there's still discussion. I want to keep everybody fresh in mind and stuff like this, is that ultimately you're looking to do three things. You're looking to make a recommendation of approval to the town council, recommendation of a denial to the town council, or task the applicant with coming back with provisions that of answering questions just like you did with the last one, what you would want this to look like. And I'll turn it back over to the applicant.
Would we gain anything? Would you be able to enlighten us any further? Because right now I'm not.
Sure. No, I understand you're not for it. I think bottom line with this tract of land, if neighborhood mixed use isn't the right, you don't feel comfortable with that. I mean, I'm fine with it moving to some other district that you are more comfortable with it. I think recreational is an extremely odd classification for this specific tract of land. When you look
it's
at
confusing because recreation is also a zoning area, and
you cannot confuse the two.
I know
they're very different.
It's a primary zone area is recreational R1.
Sure, sure, and we're not.
What's the rest of it?
This is
I think
recreation for use, not use for classification.
For classification,
not for zone.
And whatever classification, whether it be, Chad, I can't remember what other classifications allowed.
So that's what I was kind of looking for as we were talking.
I believe high density residential was one of them, and
So
that's
you have-
honestly the reason we try to steer clear of high
Yes, so
density
you have
residential.
high density residential, you have desired uses, and high density residential is multifamily residential uses, senior housing and continuing care, inappropriate uses.
And there is
commercial-
other high density residential inside Sea Trail
Most
Correct.
of it is medium density residential.
or medium density.
So I'll go through both of those real quick. High density residential desired uses has multifamily residential. Inappropriate uses is commercial development. It does have a desired density there. Applicable zoning classifications are MR3.
I will say the density that's listed in all of these districts is
21.7.
well beyond
The
anything that anybody needs to put up.
And then the considerations for that, it does say down at the bottom, establishing of new zoning district for multifamily residential uses, high density residential uses only, and or conditional standards for supplemental regulations to address this use. So that's high density residential. Medium density residential desired uses are single family, two family, townhome, age appropriate retirement housing. So desired uses is not multifamily. It goes to townhome and two family residential. Inappropriate uses is commercial development. Desired densities is there. Applicable zoning districts are MR3. And the other thing I guess I can say to this, if you look at the existing champions as it exists now, it is high density residential classified as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
The difference would be 21.7 versus
11.67.
Yeah, and that's still way more
Yes.
than
So
should be on that piece of property from a density perspective.
Yeah. Is your intention mixed use or residential?
Mixed use.
with
Mixed
with-
use
with residential.
under a very unique
Above.
concept, because this is such a unique tract of land compared to, I mean, we keep talking about other tracts of land in Sunset Beach, but there are no other tracts of land like this in Sunset Beach. This is on a golf course, adjacent to a convention center, adjacent to a monster size clubhouse for two 18-hole golf courses, and then adjacent to another multifamily condominium style building. And yes, on the back, on a narrow portion of our property, it does but single family homes. And of course, those single family homes were approved and built when the original Champions was also approved. So
But I don't know what that looked like, that site plan looked like.
it was
So
a big
it's-
loop. Same thing as it just mirror what you see over at Champions and just flip flops over. I mean, our goal is to build two residential buildings, just like the existing Champions buildings, or similar to the existing Champions buildings. That the existing residential homes on Crooked Gully are here. Two residential buildings on this 15.11 acres. Then the driving range would go in there. And down on the other side of the driving range, overlooking the range, you would have that upscale hotel, like I was explaining.
But all of
before.
that, Todd, is really anecdotal. It's not, you're not bound to do any of that. And that's where.
That's with the council currently. We would be bound to that in theory, but that is part of the submission that we've made. We've made that submission. We've made those outlines and we've drawn those conclusions for what we want to do on that property when we submitted the development agreement to the town. So to a certain degree, we don't, when I tell you that we want to build two buildings, a driving range and a hotel, we want to build two residential buildings.
And I believe you,
Right.
but things change too. Our business plans change.
What
Economies change.
And what might help to that is that, you know, you can request Todd to kind of bring you, hey, what would this look like?
And it's still a conditional use permit at the special use permit
problem with
at the end of the day.
Drawing a picture, and I take caution to what Todd would provide and what ultimately that would be before this board, is that you cannot base your approval or denial on that
specific
site plan.
Yes.
You can use it as an illustration, but you have to keep in mind you cannot approve or deny based on. So that's why that is not before you.
If high density residential is preferable to neighborhood mixed use, I mean, that's certainly amenable to me and, to us moving forward. It allows for those uses. It allows for the infrastructure that's going to support the convention center and the golf courses to be able to move forward like everybody kind of wants it to do. That's great. It's still, because it's still the underlying zoning district is MR3, doesn't take away the conditional use permit, special use permit. I started as a planner too far in the past. It was still called conditional use permits. Special use permits, it still requires that special use permit.
Can you put a comma there, semicolon? That's not my understanding.
What?
My understanding is if we approve this, he can do this.
Because we're only changing the land use plan. We're not
You're only
changing
changing
the
the land
UDO.
use plan. You're not changing the UDO.
So
The other thing I'll throw.
Okay, let me continue that sentence.
Okay.
One of the penultimate reasons for evaluating changes in the UDO is whether they're consistent with the land use plan.
So ultimately,
And if we change the land use plan,
you would be removing the inconsistencies in the policies that could be
then it
affected.
opens up the door to the reason for approval or denial based upon a unified development ordinance requirement.
To answer your question, yes. So the other thing that I think I can say this, is the one thing that I've had discussions with making sure the legal side of this is done and with Todd is that ultimately there's potentially a way to split reclassify this.
Sure.
You can split reclassify it as where he's looking to do the hotel as mixed use, because it's really weird. Going through this, that there's not one reclassification district or area that addresses fits this. And that's where the mixed use is coming in. We can kind of tweak this to make it split classified as where the hotel is going to be as mixed use, or yes, and then where the addition of the Champions ultimately becomes high density. Now I can throw that out there because I've had that discussion. That would be up to the applicant.
One of our protections, I don't want to say protections, one of our tools that we have here on the planning board when we're evaluating applicants' proposals, when it comes to the village at Sunset Beach right now, the mud district, we have limited authority as a town. We have some authority, but we have limited authority as to what happens within the multi-use within the village at Sunset Beach. I don't want to confuse it with MB2, which is also a multi-use district.
Correct.
Because they have existing architectural requirements and use requirements that are already a part of our UDO in our Appendix B, it's in Bravo. But that is very specific to the village at Sunset Beach. It's the only place it applies. This right here,
the things that we can control in the mixed use district are laid out in the UDO, such as Article 6. Just like desired uses or uses that can and cannot be allowed in MR3, MB2, BB1, BR1, any zoning district. So what you're saying, I get what you're saying, because the POA, HOA do have somewhat control to what goes on in Seaside Village. I think that's kind of not applicable to what we're talking about, because the Article 6 really addresses uses that are allowed or not allowed in MR3 or each zoning district in the UDO.
I was confused why the strikeout for under the mixed use, this is on packet page 55, why the strikeout of prohibition of I won't read the whole thing, of standalone multifamily residential,
Because if you don't do that,
because above it said that was an inappropriate use. So why did we even need to strike it out?
so standalone residential development not included as part of a PUD. I mean,
it's an inappropriate, just like MR3 has an inappropriate use, would be commercial.
Yeah.
And that gives us.
Yeah,
Now I realize that,
to me,
the reason why you strike through the prohibition of the standalone multifamily, because if you don't, then you add multifamily, they're contradicting.
yes, that only would allow on top of a commercial. That's the way I read it too.
Correct.
If you don't do that, but to me, I mean, again, it seems to me the more appropriate thing to do is reclassify this one parcel from current recreation to high density residential. And it seems to me, reading this description, it does what they want to do, as long as they get their special use permit to build the multifamily
The
attached.
problem,
Because it's
and
still
I'm
MR3.
kind of speaking for the applicant at this point, because of the conversations that we've had. That the conversation that we had, and we spent, what, an hour in my office that day. The problem that you have is that if you reclass it as high density residential, you get the multifamily, but you're limited on the hotel.
Why?
Well, if you
It
move
says-
the mixed use,
It's
you get the hotel,
Mm.
but then you got to add provisions for the multifamily.
But at the same time, we are changing, we're altering the land use plan, which is the barometer we use. That is our litmus test as to whether something is appropriate or not, as determined, as Sybil said, by our citizens. And by us changing this land use plan, we have totally changed that barometer.
You could, again, I'll go, because I think you and Sybil might have been part of that process, if I'm not mistaken.
I was.
But Mr. LeBruno, were you part of that process?
Nope.
Sybil, no. So Pete, you were probably the only
was on
one.
town
You
council
were on
at the
town
time.
council. So again, I'll address that comment by it is a living, breathing document that can be amended.
For us, the most important thing here, and I think from hearing A, from the people that we've heard here from today, B, from the folks who are not here, who have made comments in other forums, whether it be verbally or online, stuff like that, where they see infrastructure being depleted within Sea Trail, falling apart, not being met to the standards that they want. And they want to know why their restaurants aren't coming back to life. They want to know why the investment's not going back into it. Whatever needs to take place so we can keep moving in a direction that allows for the investment to take place, so things can get better, so things can get back to where they were always intended. Bottom line is we've got a 45,000 square foot building there.
But they're all based on the economy, Todd, as well.
Right, but
the
but
economy has changed since 2007, 6.
Sure, but you still have a convention center adjacent to a parcel of land that prohibits putting anything to support that structure.
I'm going to disagree. The rules limit what you can do there now, but you have administrative remedies to put a hotel there. And you could, by addressing what's the hotel going to look like, where exactly is it going to be, so that it allows a board of adjustment, to evaluate the appropriateness of that.
But they still can just say no because it doesn't meet the land use plan. I can give you all those things, every bit of it. I can give you the Taj Mahal of hotels, the greatest hotel that anybody's ever wanted, the perfect hotel. And because of the way the land use plan is written, regardless of the best architecture, the best 5-star services that could be put in there, that board can make the choice. No.
They can't be arbitrary. I've served on the Board of Adjustment.
They can say it is not
appropriate for our town and is in the best interest of our citizens.
It can be
I
denied.
would approve that as a member of the board if I was still sat on the Board of Adjustment.
Chad, can it be denied if it is inconsistent with the land use plan?
And yeah, it could.
Regardless of the design or the features that project may have.
It could also be approved,
even
being inconsistent with the land use plan.
We're just trying to build
Yeah.
2 buildings and a
Again,
hotel and a driving range that are
the
going
problem-
to bring
I know,
back.
and I
a 40
embrace that.
Right.
I
The problem
embrace
is how to get there. And again, I don't know. I mean, because even if you look at the adjustments made to this page, it's still not enough because the paragraph on the top needs to be also changed. The description, because it talks about the upper story only. So it's still all the changes to this mixed uses. It still doesn't get you there. But
we really want to get all of this stuff
I know.
back up and running. I mean, that is our number one goal. I mean, I can't implore you enough to understand that that is so crucial to getting everything to where everybody truly wants it. Where you as board members, I believe, want to see things go, where residents want to see things go, where homeowners, a majority of homeowners want to see things go. The reinvestment that needs to be put in there, the folks that are ready and willing to do that reinvestment. And I know that you say the economy, you know, and stuff like that, but we've got to get it open.
Of course.
We've got to get it open. You know, that's the most important thing. It's not helping the town, the tax revenue that can be generated, the sales revenue that can be generated. These are things that not just help Sea Trail, they help the beach.
Everybody
help the
here
roads.
supports that, Chad. Everybody on this panel supports the appropriate growth of this town and the economic and getting rid of the economic constraints
And
that we
I've tried
have.
to find out the reason why such a restrictive land use classification was put on the heartbeat center of Sea Trail. And I have not been able to determine why that is or why that happened. It's extremely unfortunate not being able to open, you know, not being able to move forward as needed. Like Dana had said earlier in her comments, at one time there were 600 rental units. The only way to ensure that there is success of the convention center and the golf courses is to ensure long-term there are rental units available. And the hotel is obviously by far the number one way to do that. That gives a resource to the convention center, directly attached to the convention center, for people to book their stays, stay on Sea Trail's campus, not interfere with, you know, the day trippers who are going to the beach. I mean, it's just, it's a no-brainer situation, and we need to figure out a way on how to get us there. Because I don't think we're as far apart as it sounds. I think we are both there, and whether or not it's a split land use plan reclassification, I personally just don't think going into a Board of Adjustment hearing is without the tools or the support of a land use plan, which I believe if we looked at the land use plan.
I guess stop it. I don't see anywhere where it's done, but is there anything that prohibits taking a parcel and giving it two classifications?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got the book out here and I'm trying to read it, but I mean, right now everything looks like it has one classification.
Yeah, you can give it two classifications. Just like any lot can be split zoned.
Well, but take the word zoning out. We're back in the land use plan.
Yes.
So we have a parcel that has a one classification now, recreation,
Mm-hmm.
and we have an applicant that deems that classification inappropriate for that parcel now and going in the future. I think we're all a little unclear and on where it should go.
Uncomfortable or unclear?
A little both. I'm unclear on which one it should go. I see good things about the misuse description, and I also see some good things about the high density, talks about buffering when it's near neighboring other properties. If we do nothing else today other than move that parcel from recreation to both mixed use and high density residential and stop today, can we do that and then allow the either applicant to comment, or if they need the further action to deal with that separately?
It all comes back to two things. One, you can do that. And then if you're looking for specific language of what it would look like, then you would need to, as a board, table it, bring it back, and allow staff and the applicant to bring that to what it would look like. If you don't want to know what it looks like and you're just comfortable with, say, hey, let's split zone it, you could make that recommendation as long as it's okay with the applicant, because it is his amendment that he is proposing, and recommend it to town council for approval or denial.
I am certainly okay with moving it forward with a split classification with existing classifications that the town has on hand. Chad and I did talk about that. It was a little bit quick, so there wasn't a whole lot of time for me to digest that and move forward with that
And
proposal.
what would you propose? Mixed use and high density?
And high density.
And leave it in no amendments to mixed use and high density. You would leave it the
Correct. Just
same.
go straight to those uses.
You'd need to or not.
No, I
because
think
it's
it covers
complicated.
all. I guess that's where I'm at.
Do you need time to digest this?
No.
We briefly spoke
The only
about
thing
this.
that, as long as you're comfortable with staff and the applicant taking the approval of reclassification as is a split reclassification of high density residential and mixed use, as long as you're comfortable with staff working with the applicant to come up with
Well, mixed use and high density both.
So
have the same
ultimately, what
density
we
of
would do
21.7
is I would work.
dwellings per acre.
We would not be amending any of the classifications, but ultimately you would be comfortable with staff and the applicant making this picture reflect that to the town council.
Yes, just changing the classification of that one parcel to a split or dual classification,
And I
mixed
would-
use, and
I would work with the
high density,
applicant,
but
to make-
changing none of the text.
I would work with the
Now-
applicant
Have
to
a
make
problem.
sure that it is split in a way to where the hotel is on the mixed use and the continuation of the Champions or
So we'd have to table
multifamily.
that then. Yes.
You wouldn't have
No.
to. You can make a recommendation of that as it is. Say,
But we don't know.
I mean, do we even have to go that far and actually showing? Can't we just leave the parcel as both?
We could split it.
you could split it.
Split it. What are your? Let me see your maps. I don't have one on me. If I can
Oh,
look
here.
at one.
Here you go.
This one?
You can go pretty much from that point to that point. High density residential and mixed use down that way. That would be more than sufficient to get to the two residential buildings. You've got a huge driving range in the middle, which is allowed regardless. So it's
Yeah,
not.
you don't
as-
need approval to do that.
all land use classifications are going to allow that out at the golf course. It's not a special use permit, then it's not a conditional use or
Right.
special use.
Special use.
So yeah, if you came right down, pretty much down the center from that point, more or less across,
Where the point you're talking at is where? By the A?
that little point right there,
All the way to
just straight across.
the end, where they have
Yeah,
roads?
come to where the brown is.
Yeah,
Brown to that point.
towards the
Excuse me,
A.
to the road. You should be good to go.
From the vertex to the letter A in avian.
Yeah.
And the reason you even need the reason you would even be requesting a mixed use classification is so that commercial can go in there. Because if it's just high density, commercial would be inappropriate.
Yeah, the hotel's not allowed in high density, and is
Right.
basically what the problem comes
It's
down
only
to.
allowed in mixed use.
And that puts that neighborhood mixed use down to where the mixed uses are, where you're going to have the food and beverage service at the convention center and, puts it down in that area where it's appropriate. Then you've got the driving range as a large buffer, and then you get back into your residential uses. And then for all intents and purposes, this whole area back here is a treed buffer is the plan to,
At a golf
to
course.
buffer it like you're concerned about from the single family home.
So
I'd like to see that.
let me help you with clean all this up, and I can help you regurgitate the motion if you were willing to do so. Mr. LeBruno is kind of insinuating, trying to get to a motion to potentially approve, and the language would be that the approval to town council, the recommendation of approval to town council, or recommendation of denial to town council, based on the reclassification of the parcel being split zoned to mixed use and high density residential
With a defined
with a defined line with no changes to chapter 9 as far as the text of altering mixed use or high density residential. Now, if you want to see it, then ultimately I would have to bring that to the August meeting. If you're comfortable with that going forward, then you could make that motion of it going
Would you be
forward.
planning on breaking ground, Todd, before the August meeting?
There's no
Or the September meeting, because that's when it would go to town council.
Well, being that we haven't submitted for any board of adjustment hearings or anything like that, the answer would be no.
If he breaks ground, he's going to get a pretty little piece of red paper delivered.
I mean,
to
I
him.
would say this, that there are other.
I'm just trying to find out his I want to be.
There's other
sensitive to
financial
his time.
consideration and contractual things that are happening in the background that are directly related to.
I want to
some of
be
this.
completely clear. This is not granting any kind of approval.
Correct.
To break land.
Oh gosh, no.
But it is establishing, and I want to be clear as to what we are reclassifying by dimensions within that parcel.
I mean, I can be as specific as this. And the map that we have in the development agreement that we have submitted, that outlines what I've been talking about with the 2 buildings, the driving range, and the hotel facility. Chad and I can certainly work out, and I'd be more than comfortable is go to the backside of that driving range area and lop off your high density residential right there, and then make the rest mixed use. And, because that map does exist.
Do we have the right to, because we're not a quasi-governmental, a quasi-judicial board, do we have the right to put him in a box and define within this parcel as to the dimensions as to what would be high density versus what would be mixed use?
It's one lot.
Yeah, because he's not going to subdivide the lot. Well,
So
I don't even want to go there. I
So
don't know.
so to answer your question, I don't think you can get there because it's one lot. So it'll be ultimately, because it is a citizen initiated, non-staff initiated text amendment, to ultimately approval, I can get a map created to ultimately that would satisfy the applicant.
But it would be binding
It would be binding to this, yes.
because we are definitively establishing what the classifications would be.
You would just be then reclassifying the land and not altering the text in the land use plan. So going back to Mr. LeBruno's point at the very beginning, you would be looking at part 1 of this and not part 2. You're eliminating part 2 because you're not making any
I
text
understand.
change. Yeah.
I understand.
So
And-
the question
and-
is
and I
how
think
to,
that's probably
the question
a good
is how
idea.
to do it. We have 2 ways of doing it.
You can have 2 ways of doing it. You
We
can
can
table
either
it.
come up with some language right now. Wait a minute.
Danger.
I know, danger. That describes this, recoloring of a line with 2 colors in it, which sounds like probably not, or say, this is what we would intend to do, and sorry about that, and request the applicant and the town to come back with a
Definitive
new map that shows the same parcel split between the 2 new
Yeah,
classifications.
so your motion to move it to town council, whether it be approve or deny, would be to make a recommend as like I make a motion to approve or deny.
Or table with
Well,
the
hold on.
information
I'm
coming
coming back
backwards.
to that. Hold on just a second. You can make a recommendation to approve or deny. We're just reclassifying the land as a split reclassification to work with the applicant on what that map would look like and present it to town council accordingly. Or table this so staff can work with the applicant on what that map would specifically look like so you can see it at the August meeting and then make a recommendation based on that map.
Does this
to
put a
the town
hardship on the
council.
applicant? We tabled it with that proviso.
It's not great. I can assure you of that. does it put a hard? I mean, I'm trying to pull up
Can we
the.
take up a collection for new glasses for you?
Yeah, they broke They broke yesterday, and now I'm trying to make new right now. So I apologize for that, but yeah, if you came off of the driveway for Avenue of Champions and drew a straight line, you would have exactly what you need.
And I know it's not great, but the other option you have is the text is in front of you. You can make a recommendation or approve or deny or table as it's written as it is right now as the staff originally applied for.
Well, we also have to clean up the language, which
Can
some
we
have
just-
been deleted anyway, and with it, so
Lord,
that
I-
all has to. If we
Or just take
approve
it
of
as
the
it
new line.
is, approve or deny it as it's written right now.
Any way we could just get a new map now?
No. I mean,
I'm
I can
unco-
pull
I'm
it-
in the time
uncomfortable
constraints
making
of this,
important
Yeah.
decisions.
Is there someone I can email and we can
On the
pull it up on
fly.
the TV? Or
Alan,
no?
This is important, and
if you want to email it to me, I can print it out and pass it. But again, I have to caution you because you cannot base approve or denial based on a
Well, I'm just trying.
I want more information.
I'm looking at it more from the where the line needs to be drawn, and I think that's what you're thinking too.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah, if you want to.
I want a document I can study, I can look at, and I can say, all right, this is high density and this is multi-use.
I don't know how
I'm only
I don't
one
know if
out
a
of
staff
four
member
votes.
can request this, but can we request a 10-minute recess?
Well, we can.
Sure,
As
yeah.
a planning board, may I make a motion for a 10-minute recess?
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Good job.
Aye.
So we'll be back at
Yes. Can the applicant explain
Alan, are we
this
good? Alan, are we good?
document?
Okay.
Make a motion to come, thank you. Make a motion to come out of recess.
I second the motion.
No, okay. You made it.
I made a motion to come out of
I
recess.
made it.
You, okay. It's fine.
We're back in session. Oh,
Whatever.
all in favor?
Aye.
We're back in session. Sorry, I was distracted looking at this new.
Okay. Mr. Larkin, you want me to go ahead?
Please.
Okay. So what I was able to get over to Chad, and everybody got a printed out copy, is what we actually submitted as a development agreement that we're working on right now with the town. This is something that we're going to end up being, locked into these things with the town. And that being able to do this is contingent on being able to.
Would you re-describe that as conversations that you've been having with town staff and the council?
Correct.
Regarding future development.
Regarding future development within Sea Trail, and that includes Track 2, which
but
we're
unofficial. They're
say,
official conversations, but there's nothing binding.
I will say
yet.
that you can say it officially. You just cannot talk about it.
Thank you.
So this document's been officially officially submitted to the town, and the town's staff and folks are going through it with our folks, reviewing the documents. This map was included. So this map, what you're looking at, is what we're looking to get locked into for Track 2, which is an extension of Champions with 2 buildings, which you see there at the top of this parcel. You can see where the cart path cuts through. You can see where the tree buffers are being left from the single family homes, which I think this helps tie that together. Will this be subdivided down the road? Yes. Why does it have to be subdivided down the road? Because there's existing stormwater plans with Champions. This is going to be tied into the Champions community. There'll be the whole plan is to put a larger upscale pool facility as opposed to the little puddle that they have, unfortunately, right now for all those condominium units. As I mentioned, there's a driving range that separates these residential uses further from the more commercial mixed use type uses that you have at the convention center. You can see the hotel located on this site and the parking lot. I'm sure and that's on top of the area that was the old exhibition hall, like I alluded to earlier in the meeting. But that is what we are looking to do specifically. This is what we're looking to get locked into being able to do with the town of Sunset Beach, in the town of Sunset Beach, within Sea Trail.
With that being said, the reason why you have the map, the reason why you are being proposed this in front of you to give you more of a picture to what you would be approving to town council. And Todd, correct me. So you have that black line that I've drawn in there. Staff would work and create a.
Is that the line through the center of the driving range?
Correct.
Correct.
So, and I would be creating a map very similar to what you've been provided on a GIS map of what it would look like reclassified. The northern part of that, abutting the Champions, would be reclassified as high density residential. The bottom half of that, more toward the existing conference center, would be classified as mixed use. Is that correct, Todd?
That is correct.
All right.
And the reason for the line going through the center of the driving range, because the driving range is allowed in all of the classifications and what have you, it just gives us the ability to, obviously this hasn't been hard engineered per se, so it gives some flexibility. Maybe a road or a parking lot needs to widen a little bit and we don't box ourselves into a corner for some general tweaks that may need to take place because we haven't had a full-blown staff review or street review or anything like that.
And would your position, Todd, be that if you brought this before, let's say, the Board of Adjustment, that they would possibly deny it because it was in conflict with the MR3 And recreational classification?
Because it's in conflict with the land use,
Recreation.
the current land use plan classification.
yeah.
Not in conflict. Neither use is in conflict with the MR3 zoning district. We're concerned about the conflict with the land use plan and the new requirement to go before the Board of Adjustment, bringing in the specifics of the land use plan.
Well, you couldn't put a hotel in an MR3 district because it would be commercial.
For special use, you can.
MR3 has always allowed hotels in the
Under a special use.
correct. Yes.
Okay, I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
But this whole thing was classified recreation, so none of it would have fit under that.
Yes.
So it could have been denied based on the land you could have been denied.
Can be denied.
Can be denied based on the land. So if we split this as per, recommend a split as a pros to the northern section being high density residential and the southern half being mixed use with no changes to the text in the land use plan, that'd be sufficient to move this forward.
It's sufficient either way for me. It would be up to the board if it's sufficient for y'all.
But it's
sufficient to the applicant. Sufficient to the applicant.
But it still has to go before the Board of Adjustment.
No.
Or,
No.
Town council.
No. Before approval would be given for a hotel in
Yes.
that area, that would be a special use and would have to go before the Board of Adjustment.
Correct. Same thing with multifamily.
And you're talking about, at least in your mind's eye, you're talking about possibly adding two more champion buildings to the 6 that are there.
And the development agreement that has not been approved by the town, should it get approved with this track 2 layout as we see here, would lock us into that type of development. So we have to go through the processes that are there in the zoning ordinance, but we are committing to this upfront with that development agreement process with the town currently. That's ongoing currently.
I want to reiterate one thing. I think this map is pretty.
Right.
It's got great features, all that. You cannot base your approval of accepting this or denying this based on this specific plan. You are only looking at the map as it sits right now to reclassify it as high density residential and mixed use. You're using this as a tool to guide you on the reclassification of land.
But this is an official document now.
This is an official
This is
document.
entered into the record of the planning board.
Correct. But
It's
neither project is being proposed in front of you. And ultimately, this does not grant them approval for this project. And
they don't have to do any of this.
They don't have to do any of this.
In fact, they can do something different that
They
would
can.
fit within the classifications.
Correct.
of
You
high
are only
density
looking
and
at the
multi-use.
reclassification of land when it comes to this.
Okay.
Yes, this is what they want to do. This is what is being proposed as what they want to do.
I guess
But
in
when
my
you look-
mind, all I'm looking at is the line.
Yes, that's all you can
We know
look
the
at.
boundaries of the tract,
They were splitting this.
but the line,
I have
which is essentially drawn between down the middle from the end in Avenue to the middle of the trees over by the lake on the west side. But that essential line is what splits the parcel classification. That's all we're really talking about.
Correct.
Correct.
And it does not obligate them, Chad, for tract area 2A to make that open green space, tract
No.
area 2B to retain that as open green space.
Nope, you cannot look at any of that. Because
Okay.
that's not what's in front of you. In front of you is the reclassification and amending the land use plan.
But that line still is not dimensioned. Even
No,
though
they will
it's,
still say one tract. You would just be reclassification and reclassifying it according to that line as two classifications instead of one or the other.
but if the line is not a definitive dimensional,
It will be based on
mets and bounds.
So when we would take the future land use map, right? Yes, that. And I know somebody had a bigger one. As we would amend the future land use map to reflect the split as it's approved by council, if council approves it.
Right. So up in this corner
So,
here,
yeah,
there's
you'll
a
see the
little
green.
two-color thing
Yes.
going on.
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, we're locking ourselves in with what's going on with the town council and the town in general. We're locking ourselves into this plan down the road. That doesn't give us carte blanche approval. Still would have to go before the appropriate approving boards to get, make sure that we meet all our landscaping, sidewalks, parking, lighting, all those kinds of things, stormwater and all that other kind of good stuff. But for all intents and purposes, two residential buildings, amenities, the hotel, and then a driving range.
So Chad, this original layout for the existing 6 Champion buildings and the proposed 8 new buildings, Champions buildings, would not have given the applicant the approval to go in and put these 8 new high-density buildings in.
It would be up to the Board of Adjustment. The approval would be in the hands of the Board of Adjustment. Could the applicant come before Board of Adjustment as a special use permit for the hotel?
Say that
or
this was always the plan.
Hold on. So the applicant could come before the Board of Adjustment submitting a application for the hotel, which is a special use permit, or the multifamily part of this could meet all the standards of the UDO, but as it sits right now,
doesn't meet the land use.
Does not. It could be approved or denied, and the denied part could be based on recreational classification of the land use plan, not supporting the hotel or the multifamily.
Even though this exists already, that shows that there were going to be there was planned all along.
Yeah, I mean,
for more Champion buildings to be built.
I can plan to go to Disney World in October, but that doesn't mean I'm going or not.
There was no original plat approved.
Correct. The
Well, we
only
had
thing
to
that was
approve
approved
the
is what's
first
there
6.
now.
They approved the first 6, but unless there was a plat approved,
Correct.
then it doesn't exist. It was an idea.
Or continuation of vested rights, which ultimately
probably
is definitely expired.
Yeah, that's over.
Yeah.
So, Chair, how do we move forward? I guess I'm okay moving forward with the 2 classifications on this one parcel, allowing staff to give to council the exact location of that line that meets with council's approval.
What it does, in my mind, is it opens up to the applicant the further development of the conference center area. And at the same time, which I thought would have already existed, opens up to the applicant the ability within MR3 and within a recreational classification area in the land use plan to add 2 more Champion buildings. But that being said, that all sounds good.
No, sounds
and that's exactly what probably everybody in this room would want. But by us doing this and reclassifying it from recreational classification into high density and mixed use with this line on the line, as I put it on here, that is somewhat, I guess we could say it could be scaled. None of that's binding. It could move 100 feet and we wouldn't be able to say that wasn't our intent.
We can certainly provide an accurate document to staff that shows exactly this on a scaled representation. I mean, that's not a difficult thing to have.
And that isn't really my problem. Well, it's part of my problem.
And it doesn't subdivide the property.
But all is it by us doing that, you could then do anything, or whoever, you could sell the property, and then whoever would buy it could do anything they wanted, as long as it met the high density in one half of it and met the mixed use in the other half.
And met all the conditions that are already required under a special use. All we're doing is changing the classification. We're not getting rid of the approval process or changing the approval process. The town is going to get another shot at reviewing this to ensure that they're happy through the special use permit process. The landscaping gets enhanced. There's no carte blanche gift giving, that's going on. There is still a lot of approval processes and energy that needs to be gone through in order to get to that final product.
Chad, this document that you've drawn the line on, this existed, and town council's already seen it.
I can't talk about it. It's in closed session.
We submitted
You've answered the question. Thank you.
We submitted a map to the town. This map.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, but I'm not sure how to say it. Yeah, I guess so. I'd like to make a motion to move for approval of reclassifying parcel number 24200000954, presently classified in the 2017 land use plan as recreation, to reclassify that parcel in two forms: the northern part of the parcel as high density residential, the southern section of that parcel as mixed use, with a properly dimensioned map being provided to the council with this approval.
That suffices.
We hear a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Sybil, you were positive?
Yes.
Okay.
4-0. So I want to say two things. One, that's all you need to say, because there's no consistency statement, because
right.
You can't be consistent with, there's nothing to be consistent with. The other thing is that I wanted to just add as a caveat and note to this, and not specific to Todd's proposal, that in chapter 10 of the land use plan, it states down here, in fiscal year 2022 through 2024, that update the land use plan every 5 to 7 years,
right,
to address changing dynamics, population growth, economic development, and housing needs. Town staff elected to update the UDO first, because that needs to be done.
Well, the updating the land use plan is a suggestion.
It's a suggestion, but in priority, the UDO needed to be updated before the land use plan does. Wanted to make that clear.
So you're saying after the UDO is rewritten, approved, booked in the law,
we will probably be taking a look at the land use plan.
Task of relooking at the land use plan, including all the research and demographics and everything.
Correct.
All needs to be updated.
This needs to be, yeah.
And then citizen participation.
Yeah, you
3 to
want
5 year.
Right.
Yeah, you want to stay within 5 to 7 years after it's approved. So
just to make a statement too, we have quite a bit of land within the town of Sunset Beach that is classified as MB2, which is commercial, cut to the chase, in our mud district, which is the village at Sunset Beach. And planning board is reviewing, along with town staff, both of those classifications, because we realize that times have changed and how important businesses are to the health of our community and the convenience to our citizens. I've not, I don't see anything more on the agenda except for public comments. I'd like to entertain any public comments. They can be on any topic. They don't necessarily have to be on this agenda, but something appropriate for the planning board.
So this is Greg Barrett again, 204 Jonesbird Court in Sunset Beach, Sea Trail. This has been a fascinating experience for me. First time I've attended one of these. And I appreciated your candor and the way in which you address these things. And I'm appreciative of the fact that you were able to reach a resolution on that last thing by working together with the developer. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation in our meeting.
Chris Kirch, 920 Oyster Point Drive. First time I've attended this, and I appreciate the opportunity for you guys to agree to and work with Riptide Builders to help the whole community, because that's what's important, is keep bringing in growth to the community of all people that want to move here and enjoy it. So thank you very much.
Any other comments?
Bob Forrester, 110 Crooked Gully Circle. I would like to be able to say that this is the first time I attended one of these meetings and saw how it worked.
But it's not.
No, but it's not. I wanted to make clear on comments that I made earlier. It's very difficult to fit into 3 minutes prior to a presentation. Everything that you want you to consider is, I want everybody to understand that Sea Trail Plantation is not the golf, the village at Sea Trail. I mean, the Mud
Sunset
District, the all the way down. We're sitting right now in property that's in Sea Trail. It's all zone B1 and B2. It's all within the declaration of Sea Trail Plantation. Same thing is true with regard to the Champions. The Champions, as I submitted in my letter to you all, has a proposed, and it is a proposed, it's not approved, 14 building project, 6 built, 8 not. But that property has been subjected to the declaration. Now, I assume the Champions Declaration, which means they have to, whoever owns that property, whoever develops it, has to develop it in accordance with the Champions Declaration. Just like anybody that develops in Sea Trail has to develop in accordance with the Sea Trail Declaration. So as far as this track you were just talking about, track 2 you were just talking about, it's going to require the applicant to, and they may have already done it, but it's going to require the applicant to get with the Champions, because there's going to have to be consent from the Champions to whatever is going to take place on what's within the bounds of their, regardless who owns it, what's within the bounds of their development. And that development is the 14 buildings. And as I say, they may already have conferred with them and resolved that. One of the things that's taken so long and that makes me a little bit frustrated is we're trying to fit a 50-pound potato into a 5-pound sack. I've worked for 40 years with zoning ordinances and land use plans, and there's a way to do this. There's a way to accomplish what they want to accomplish. It is relatively simple through a planned unit development, where it requires a specific plan. It requires specific agreement between the municipality and the applicant. And I've provided earlier, not in connection with this necessarily, but I provided Chad with a copy of one that I had worked with before. Another comment that I wanted to make is that the classification has to be changed, and the use has to be changed for this tract too, if the convention center is ever going to be used, because once council, and I don't know what they're going to do, but once a council acts on your recommendation to separate the convention center from the Jonesburg Clubhouse, it's now a standalone building on tract 2, which is a non-conforming use that has been abandoned, hasn't been operating. Your ordinance says if it's not used, a non-conforming use is not used in 6 months, it's abandoned. So when you get to the use part of track 2, you got to consider if that building is going to be there and it's going to be used, you got to deal with that abandoned non-conforming use, yes, assuming the council separates the buildings. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody for staying within the time limit of the conversations.
Time out.
I'll be quick. I promise. The convention center is on a separate parcel of property. Track 2 does not contain any part of the Jonesburg Clubhouse or the convention center moving, at any point in time. It's on separate parcels of property. But anyway, thank you.
Adjourn us.
All right. We'd like to, any more business from town council? We'll then adjourn the meeting. Sybil?
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Like it, let's go.
Second. Meeting
All in
adjourned.
favor?